After spending 8 hours in Final Fantasy XIV, reaching level 17 and becoming sexually confused about cats, bunny, and dragon people, here are my first thoughts about Final Fantasy XIV. Welcome, Classy Crew, to the beginning of what will be a fully documented Final Fantasy XIV journey, at least up until the first expansion, Heavensward. Now, I'm going to be committing 1 month of streaming just Final Fantasy XIV so I can get through a Realm Reborn to really understand if Final Fantasy XIV is a game I will want to play all the way through to get the story. It's what I've been told is one of the best stories ever written in any media, so the expectations are quite high. I'm lowering my expectations because at the end of the day, it's an MMO, it's a Final Fantasy game, and it is 10 years old. So when I got into the game, I did 2 streams. I did 8 hours, 2 4-hour streams. I gotta say, I am playing on the Crystal Data Center Diabolos, if anybody cares. And before even launching the game, my community was like, first, you gotta watch trailer 1. So we popped in trailer 1, which I believe this was the trailer of the game, in the game, before Realm Reborn started, which is 2.0 of the game. Now, that first trailer, I honestly don't understand why anybody needed me to see it because it didn't show anything. It felt like a promo piece of Final Fantasy IP. Like, it starts off with these 3 characters in a bar, which I have no context of who they are, what their relationship is to each other, other than they seem to know each other. The guy freaks out looking at a card and suddenly remembers fighting a Malboro. I don't know if he's remembering or if he's foreseeing Malboro fight, and then all of a sudden we're in the sky with these stupid like vertical devices. There's some really cool airships. I love airships. It all looks cool, and the music like crescendos, and it's like boom, Final Fantasy XIV Online. I was like, all right, doesn't tell me anything. I have no context, doesn't show me anything other than cool cutscene, bravo. At least in comparison, you know, another MMO I played, Star Wars Old Republic, that opening cutscene where you got like the Sith that infiltrate the Jedi Temple and then kill, like there's a huge fight that breaks out between the Jedi and the Sith. That sets me up to, oh, okay, the Sith sacked the Jedi Temple, and that actually kind of serves as the start of the story. So after that, I got into... Did we get into the character creation next, or did we go straight into... I think I went straight into the character creation, which I was honestly quite scared of this part because this is, on the one hand, it's commitment, but on the other hand, I like that I think in Final Fantasy XIV, you can change anything you want at any time, even if it costs a little bit of money. The reason I'm scared is because as a streamer, I feel it is important to be a little different, to stand out, to do something. But my base form is a very vanilla, and every character creation, I always go for the most vanilla. Like, I basically build a character that looks like me or a very slight variation of me, which is just not interesting, but I can't help it. It's what I'm drawn to. I'm drawn to Sword and Shield. I'm drawn to characters that I can relate to that look like me, and that's how it is. So the character creation, the first thing was coming up with my name. Now, usually in a game, I always go with Hey Jay, and I felt it would be weird because in this game, Hey would be the first name, Jay would be the last name, and they'd all call me Hey or Mr. J. It just didn't feel right. So I want to be a little bit more creative here. And thanks to an awesome recommendation from the chat, we ended up with J-O-Hey. So going back into the race, we've got... I went by process of elimination because I was like, okay, how do I do this? So the easiest was, and I'm going to bastardize every word you've ever held dear to Final Fantasy XIV. That's just how I am. The Hrothgar and the Viera, which are both locked behind the expansion. I'm on the free trial. So, I can't play those? Perfect. I can tell you, I don't want to play as a child, so the Laudafell, boom. The Elezen are so ugly. Like, they're these tall, lanky, I just don't like their proportions. So now we're down to the final 4, which was the Aura, which is like the dragon people, the kitty people, the Rogadin, and the Hyur, which is like the human. So out of those 4, I felt the dragon was the least attractive. I don't like the ears. I don't like really a character with scales. Like for myself, I don't see myself as someone with scales. The kitty people, I think the tail is what I was like, I'd rather not have a tail, even though, you know, the kitty people are very good looking people. And especially their starting wardrobe is the best out of these 3. So that was really skewing me. In the end, I went with the Hyur. Sorry, I went with the human. For my class, once again, I was really pushing myself not to go with the Sword and Shield, the Gladiator class. And looking at it, I pretty much disqualified the magic classes because I'm just not into magic. I prefer melee combat. Funny that I say that because I ended up going with the archer of all things, because when I played World of Warcraft many, many years ago, I loved the hunter, and I can say that going into the game, I've enjoyed that gameplay. Now, what I don't like, the archer seems, well, he looks stupid in the character creation screen. I just hate his armor. And I know that the archer evolves into the bard, which I don't want that. Now, if I don't like the bard, my plan is to go to the marauder because I love axes. So that's my backup. And I understand that changes me to a tank, which I'm okay with. So that's who we got. Eorzea is this beautiful, I don't know if he's on screen, but this beautiful man, which every time I see him in a cutscene, I'm just like, oh. So we're getting launched into Eorzea. And I got some context of the story. So the Warriors of Light, there was like this massive calamity 5 years ago. They sealed like Bahamut, I think, in some kind of weird crystal thing. And the land has been rebuilding for the past 5 years. So that's pretty much all I know. I get into Gridania, which is kind of my base town, and I got introduced to some Mughals, which so happy to see that Mughals are here. Interesting that I can see Mughals, but other people can't see Mughals. So I already know I'm important. I suspect I'm the reincarnation of a warrior of light that probably died 5 years ago. I don't know. That's my theory so far. Going into the stream, I didn't get straight into the story. I had some help from my community to set everything up. We actually spent 30 minutes just going through menus and suggestion like what to turn off, where the controls are. I ended up going with mouse and keyboard, but after talking and thinking about it some more after I finished my stream, I really do want to try the controller. I love like holding controllers. I just never considered that for an MMO, but I heard they did it really well in Final Fantasy 14. So next time I stream, I'm going to try with controller to see if I can get used to that control more than mouse and keyboard, because I do find moving around with the AWS keys to be very like stiff, and I don't know. I'm just not a mouse and keyboard kind of guy. Then I got flooded with friend requests, and it's funny. So I did my first like little introduction to Mother Mune. Maybe her name's Mune. I'm gonna say Mune, who's like kind of the mama guiding you in your early stages of Gridania. And it's funny because as soon as I turn around from like that quest counter to like go out, there is a crowd of like 13 people, which are all members of my community, just waiting there and like throwing off fireworks and welcoming to the world of Final Fantasy 14. It was quite a special moment. And then Blue led me around the town of Gridania to kind of activate all the warp points so I can travel more easily throughout town. And it was just like this big mob of people following me. So I was following Blue, and then there was just a mob of people following me. It's funny because when I created my character, I was like, I don't like drawing attention to myself. And then here I am just going around town with like a big parade of people following me. It was quite funny. Once I actually actively got started in questing and seeing and playing the game, everybody kind of backed off, left me alone. They wanted me to experience the game as genuinely as possible. But it was funny because wherever I'd go, I couldn't really see the people in my community, but every now and then I could see like one of them flying, one of them popping up, like running behind a bush in the far distance. If there was like a really like big monster getting too close to me, like I would just see 3-4 people jump out of the bush, like boom, 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 boom. While I did feel alone, from time to time, I could tell that I was being watched from every direction as people were just kind of like making sure I didn't need help at any point. It was quite a unique experience. So I've just finished the attack of the Ixali on the forest. And so here's what I know so far, and it's not much. The forest is under attack. That's pretty much all I know. And the Ixali, which is like this lizard race, seems to have been prodded by these Bringer of Chaos characters that are named Ascians. They're like, for some reason, I guess, trying to bring about chaos, and they're trying to attack the forest or something. And there's two characters that seem pretty important called Ida and Papalimo, which are trying to figure out or investigating what's going on. That's all I know so far. So I know very little about the game or about the story. And this is where I'm being very forgiving, because if I had no context for the game, no context or expectation, I would be very disappointed because nothing in the game has hooked me yet. But again, my expectations are low. I wasn't expecting much at this stage. So I left off the game where now they want to recognize me in the celebration in the town, and I have to get preparations underway so I can be like the hero that saved, I don't know, the town from this attack or something. That's where I am in my main quest. On the Archer quest, I haven't progressed too far. I've made it to the part where I met a guy that looks like Tom Hiddleston, which he's really mean. He doesn't like me for some reason. I think he's a racist. But anyways, when it comes to quests, as per advice people gave me, I'm only focusing on the main story quests and my class job quests. I'm not really doing side quests because I heard, in a Realm Reborn, it's a lot of fetch quests. That said, my first impressions of this is it feels very much like a classic MMO. I've played a few before, and this is what it feels like. Now, I know I'm playing the part that came out 10 years ago, but it's very stale. It's very text heavy. It's very, I need you to go kill these things. I need you to go find a chocobo egg. It's not, the most exciting stuff yet. And I find the menu design, not the layout, just how it looks, to feel very old. And maybe it's just the style of Final Fantasy, because I'm comparing it to a Blizzard dashboard UI. In WoW, I think it's very attractive, the Blizzard stuff, what Blizzard designs for the World of Warcraft brand. So all that said, I'm being very forgiving to the game. I do think it would be very hard for anyone to get into this game because it's not really too much playing to my final, it's not giving me strong Final Fantasy vibes. It's giving me very strong MMO vibes. I'm not getting pulled into the story yet because there's not too much going on. And, but we're going to keep playing. Another thing I do like about the game is they give you this hunting log, which really encourages you to slay things. Instead of doing quests, you get a little indicator to I like filling up bars, progress bars and stuff. So the hunting log is perfect for that. You get some experience boost. So I have to say, just doing the main quest and the job quests, I've been leveling up very comfortably, and that's how it should be. That is perfect for a beginner. Another thing though I don't like is I started off with some pretty decent looking armor, and everything I'm getting through my quest is making me uglier and uglier. Look at what I look like right now. I look like a sack of potatoes. I'm so disappointed every time I get new armor. I'm like, yay, better stats, but worse aesthetic. It's kind of the price I have to pay to, I guess, play a little bit better. So that's where I am. And then after the story, because I was playing this around Christmas, was the last day I could get the special event Santa outfit. I was seeing a bunch of people with it. I'm like, I want a Santa outfit. So I did the first part of that quest. So I got my first event item, which is the Santa outfit. Another thing I noticed is a bunch of mounts and stuff. There was a fat chocobo. I was like, oh, how do you get that? And I learned it's a deluxe item from, I think, the collector edition or something. So that's on sale. I'm going to be buying that because I am going to be playing this game for at least a month, and I want to have a fat chocobo. So it's on sale for 50% off. I'm going to buy that, get all of the deluxe items. So we're going to be playing with some good stuff. So where I'm at right now, just, I guess, my impressions of Ida and Papalimo, those seems to be the only characters that really matter here because they're the only ones that got a cutscene with dialogue. They're an interesting couple, and that's all I have to say. They really don't strike me, they strike me as important, but I just don't have enough to go on yet. I just can't really speculate or anything. So I don't know how this world is working, what the forces of power are, what the politics are all about, who's doing what, who do we have to be mindful of. I know even the Ixali don't even seem that bad. It looks like they're just driven to do something they don't want. So I look forward to continuing the story and seeing where this all goes. Hopefully it heads in a good direction. I really hope I get some better outfit. I hope my Archer storyline gets better. And I hope the story picks up, and from what I hear, it will. So if you want to see where I go next, be sure to follow along on this channel. I'll be uploading another journal as I progress through Final Fantasy on a weekly basis. That stream will be starting right after I finish my Monster Hunter 4U journey. So I'll see you then, and until next time, keep it classy. Final Fantasy 14 throws a lot at you. You got your main story quests, your side quests, the blue quests you want to do, the blue quests you don't want to do. It's a lot to take in. Welcome back, Classy Crew, to the second journal of Final Fantasy XIV as I work my way through this game for the very first time and document my journey. How far am I going to get in the next 2 months? Who knows? There's no pledge. I'm going at my own rate. I'm now roughly 16 hours into this game, and I finally found some traces of plot, which is a great thing. In the last journal, I played almost 10 hours and there was really no plot. Now, I will say somehow I missed the very important trailer, which if I would have seen that, I would have understood a bit more plot. And a lot of people criticize this on the last journal. Why did you watch the 1.0 trailer and not the 2.0 trailer? And I only found out about this because it plays if you leave the title screen on long enough, which I do when I start the stream, that there's this whole amazing trailer that starts with what has to be one of the most beautiful songs in Final Fantasy XIV I've heard so far. And I mean, I keep hearing some new bangers. You've got like this battle that's going on. It looks like it's the free, I'm going to call them the free folk because I don't know who they are, going up against like an empire. And then like you've got the moon that shatters. What else happens there? Bahamut comes out of it and destroys everything. And then like the music crescendos and it's just like, this really reignited my drive of like, what is going on in this game? What is happening? Especially now that I've played a little bit, I'm starting to understand a little bit, I think, what the game is laying down. So yeah, so Bahamut's destroying everything. The war is pretty much interrupted because it's like, oh my God, the moon just blew up and there's a massive dragon thing killing us all. And then somehow there's this old dude who just like seems to be casting something, and we see glimpses of these other characters which I have met, so I now know that they are the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, which seem to be important. It looks like they're all coordinating a seal that brings everything together, sealing Bahamut in some kind of digital world. And it looks like the old man's sacrifice, which also now I recognize as the meme, because I've seen this meme for like the last 10 years. I was like, oh, that's where that's from. The final key is these important characters, which were in the 1.0 trailer, get transported to a new world. It looks like everything was going to get destroyed, but the old man's like, no, you guys are important. They don't seem confused at all. They're just like smiling. Let's call on our chocobo and let's ride to this town with a massive thing through it. That part I don't get, but I assume it has to do with the whole Realm Reborn. Sorry, these journals are not going to be very well organized. It's just kind of me rambling off my thoughts. But outside of that, I've moved the story forward where I've actually gone to the 3 main towns, and I think these are the starter towns. So I'm understanding the world so much. Like, so far I've only known Grandia. Now I agree with Rurikon, who said that is the most boring starter town. These other towns are so much more lively. There's so much more going on. It actually feels like you're part of the world. Grandia just feels like, or Grandia, feels like where people go to retire and forget about the world's problems. But then you've got like Ul'dah, which has freaking fantastic music, a lot more going on there. And then Limsa, what's it called? I've also heard Town of Disease, where all the people do like... So I met the heads of all of those towns, like Connie, Senna. I'm going to be bastardizing everything, so please just like, don't even touch that keyboard and be like, actually it's pronounced like, I'm going to learn in time. We've got Raban, which is head of Ul'dah, and we've got Merylwib, who's head of Limsa. I've seen the echo that these people were all at that battle with the Empire. I've also been introduced to the Empire, and I've also been introduced to the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. So all of this now is starting to interconnect. What I understand is that it is 5 years since the calamity, aka the moon blowing up. The Empire was expanding because they want to bring order and control and unity, which, you know, that's what empires do. So I'm all with that. And so this conflict clearly hit a climactic point between all of these towns and the Empire. And then there was the calamity, and then the Scions of the Seventh Dawn did something with the old man, sealing it all, and now the world is kind of in the state of like semi-destruction because of the war and also because of that massive calamity. Everyone's rebuilding, and that's the ground layer of what I know so far. And that's good because that's all I need to get started. I'm like, okay, I understand. I'm appreciating what the world is not just trees and fighting lizard folk in the forest. And like, who are these warriors of light? Where are they now? Who's this empire? It looks like they're going to be starting a new campaign. These are all questions that are driving my curiosity, that are driving me forward in the main story quest. So with all that, geez, what to even start on? Where do we go from here? So yeah, that's what I've been doing. I've been progressing. I'm at about level 28. I've seen all of the starter towns now. Grandia, definitely like good cozy town, but not the best first impression for this game because it's showing its age in some places, and Grandia is probably like the worst. It just shows the worst of it all. Ul'dah has amazing music. I love the music, the soundtrack all around Ul'dah, like the town and whatever's around it has had the best tracks in the overworld part of the game. And then Limsa, it's a town of pirates. It's a town of degenerates from what I understand. I like the vibe. I like what's going on here. I didn't spend much time, because this quest pretty much took us into Ul'dah. That's where like the main thing is. So once you're done exploring the first 3 towns, you get then introduced to the dungeons. And I have to say, from like a game design mechanic standpoint, I just love how they are guiding the player. And this is not something I saw in the other MMOs I played, which was pretty much just World of Warcraft and Old Republic. But you got to do these smith quests, which teaches you all of the main mechanics of whatever your class is. So I'm a DPS, you know, as an archer, I do damage per second. You know, learning the mechanics, learning how to work as a team, all of that is forced on the player, which could be very handholdy for an MMO experienced player. But for people who never have played this, don't know anything, I think that is very valuable. So you're going into the dungeon with some level of experience from the get-go. Like, you got a little tutorial out of that. Even better, the smith quest rewards you with an amazing drip. So I've been wearing like this clown suit for a while. I actually really love this outfit. This outfit just looks good, and I'm not in a hurry to replace it. Also, in those tutorials, I got introduced to a monster called a Gubu, which, I mean, I think it's an iconic monster. I've seen some people run around on them, but the name and the design of this thing, I love it. I love Gubu, and I can't wait to get my own Gubu. Speaking of getting my own stuff, I did get a wind-up ship as my first minion. I call him Swifty. He's not, you know, it's Swifty like in this world. He's just a very swift ship, and so we're gonna call him Swifty, and he is the best airship, and I love him. I got into my first dungeon, which is tied to the pirates. It's called Sastasha. I have to say, as a first dungeon, this thing did not leave much of an impression on me. Just story-wise, there wasn't much to say. I'm not gonna really dissect the mechanics of a dungeon because I'm not an MMO player. I can't tell you, oh yes, the mechanics of this fight was very similar to this in WoW, or much better. Story-wise, Sastasha was disappointing. It's a pirate den, and you're raiding it, and you're pretty much chasing a pirate through the den until you defeat him. Then we head over to Grandia for their dungeon with the Tamtara Deepcroft. This one was a much better dungeon from a lore perspective. Like, you walk in and there's a moon. There's a freaking like moon clone in the middle. And from what I understand, this is a place where the Lambs of Dalamud get together, and they were worshippers of the moon, and I understand the moon was called Dalamud. And it's like, well, what are they worshiping now? The moon blew up, so now they're like making their own moon or something. This whole cult from a lore perspective has caught my attention. I'm just like, what are you guys, like, what are you doing here? And that dungeon was great because, like, well, it's your introduction to this cult, and then you're like basically breaking their moon, and then out of the moon there's like a Cthulhu that comes out, or a Cthulhu wannabe, and then you kill that. And I'm sure this is not the last we're gonna see of this cult, but I'm already intrigued of this cult that worshiped the moon so hard they needed to rebuild a new moon. Dungeon 3 was also a step up from Dungeon 2, which was the Copperbell Mines. Again, I love the lore of this. The fact that centuries ago there were some, like, they dug too deep and they no, that's not what it was. They were enslaving giants to do the mining for them, and then the giants are like, forget this, and then the miners are like, okay, time to bury the giants and seal them off. And now that they are mining again, they have reawoken the giants, who are very pissed off about being enslaved and being buried alive. And so now you got to take them out. And also from a boss mechanic standpoint, like, there was a lot more to do and be aware of. It's not just spam all of your weapons. And so that was really fun. Like, even the final boss here, which was, I think his name was Gyges the Great. So many mechanics where you have to move, where there's like AoEs, you have to get close to him, you have to get away from him. Like, where you are positioned in the fight is important. And it was just great. Also, I have to say, another big thing that happened this week is I changed my controls to controller. So the first 2 streams I did it all on keyboard, as I've always played MMOs, but I had heard that Final Fantasy XIV has a very well-designed controller interface for MMOs, which I don't understand how that makes sense. There's so many key presses. How do you map that to a controller? So far though, it has been so comfortable to play with a controller. So I'm using more of a hybrid system. So when I'm streaming, I'm pretty much just holding the controller, and I don't have to move or like rest my hands in a weird way. Whereas if it's keyboard and mouse, like, you're constantly doing some of this and you're holding your wrist anyways. And then when I need to do like some menu digging and analyzing stuff and clicking around, I just like bring my mouse over and I start clicking with the interface. It's so seamless. It's so good. The comfort of the controller, it just can't be replaced for me. And everything maps so well. Like, you just push one button and then you get like all the face buttons that act as basically a key. And so you got pretty much 8 keybinds per, like, if you hold right trigger, that's 8 keybinds. If you hold left trigger, that's another 8. It's going to be interesting when I'm actually more well versed. I'm still struggling to remember where my buttons are or like setting up my keybinds. It's all going to come in time. I'm going to have like my social bar, my dungeon bar, my raid bars, whatever. I got to learn. But I have to say, switching a controller with a little bit of assistance from the mouse and keyboard has been fantastic so far. I got introduced to the Scions of the Seventh Dawn, which are headquartered in the Ul'dah region. So I've been really stuck in Ul'dah here. Also getting introduced to all of the Scions, including Minfilia, Thancred, Ida and Papalimo again, so they were Scions the whole time. Ishta, I think, or Ishtara, Ishtola, that's the one. And Eorzea, I think his name is French. I am now off on like a little mission with Thancred. We're trying to figure out who's kidnapping all these people. It sounds like these Amalja, who are like lizard folk in the desert, they're kidnapping, but why? We don't know why. So I have to say though, like as excited as I've been, this part of the story has been very dry. I've been spending about an hour and a half moving this Thancred quest line forward, and it has been so bland and boring and old like MMO style questing. I was warned for this, so like I'm not knocking anything, but I'm just saying, okay, I see how people can get turned off from this game if they don't get in the mindset that it gets better. At least I hope it gets better. I'm promised it gets better. So yeah, this part is just like, go here, click that, talk to this person, go run back there, report to that person, go back there, investigate that. And it's so fetchy, and like it just doesn't give you rewards. It doesn't give you fun fights. It doesn't give you fun lore. It's just a lot of running around. And to be fair, I'm getting to understand like and appreciating that part of the world, but it's grindy. So I'm just kind of buckling down and being like, all right, let's do it. Let's eat our bland cereal, because there's a nice like, I don't know, buffet coming up after this. So that's where we are with the story. The next part is going to be going to kill some Amalja. I've been told I got to go kill them. So let's go be a murderer. Other little side things that happened this past week. So I did get a classier outfit because I was complaining about my drip. So I got a nice like old tuxedo, which I have to say, I don't really like the top. It feels too wide, too open. That's my complaint about that. Luckily, I got my good drip from the Smith quest, so we're good there. There's a bunch of features that have been unlocked thanks to the help of the community. I did some side questing, guided side quest to unlock Glam, which is like, for Monster Hunter fans here, it's like layered armor. It lets you pretty much look the way you want. At this stage, I think it's too early for me to dabble with this. This is like a complex system to me. I got introduced, I got like a little tutorial in my ear, and I'm just like, I've started being more aware of the job system and what jobs are available, and I see it now on my character profile, all the jobs I can do. And I'm like, these all go up to level 99. People are like, yes. I'm like, oh, well, we got to do all of them. And they're like, no, that's not what you want to do, but I do want to do that. I'm still not ready to go into job because there's just so much stuff coming at me. I'm going to get into jobs soon. Right now, I'm leaning towards wanting to mine, because if I can mine, like mining is a great thing I love to do, and probably cooking. I know they don't go together. I know mining is great with like armor and weapon and smithery or whatever. Like that is the optimal route, but we're not optimal here. So I want to be able to cook stuff, and I want to be able to mine stuff, because that's what I like doing. So I'm eventually, when I take a break from the story, I'm going to go and dabble in jobs and see what that's all about. And then we did take a side trip to the Golden Saucer just to get it unlocked, so I know where it is. I did do a little tour, like you have to do a little tutorial area that gets, it just shows you this is what this is, this is what this is. So I kind of ran through that a little bit quick, because I didn't want to be in the Golden Saucer just yet. I saw how big it is. I'm like, okay, there's too much to do right now in the main side quests, or the main story quests. We're going to come back to the Golden Saucer when I'm a little bit more bored, I'm a little bit more familiar with the world. We're going to lose ourselves in essentially this theme park and have fun. The only thing I got to say though, I got to try this game called Mini Cactpot, which is like a little scratch ticket thing, which was pretty fun. And the first one, I had Blue in my ear kind of guiding me of like, oh, scratch that, scratch that. And then I finally learned what to do. So the second one, I'm like, don't talk to me. And I understand it's like you scratch 3 and you try to create like the sum. And I won on my first try, jackpot. I got 10,000 whatever points. So that was my little victory music thing of the Golden Saucer. And then I guess the last thing I forgot to talk about is the class quest. So as an archer, I've been progressing that. So now I've pretty much an equal to my 2 trainees, whatever, Lei and Silver. We went out on a mission to find some poachers. We found out that these poachers were named Pawa Mujuk, who seems to have some history with Lei. I think they're from like the same litter or something, whatever they refer to themselves as. Sylvain hates them, wants to kill her. Lei wants to leave, but then I think I convinced her not to, and that there's more to life than running away or something. So that's where I'm at with that. The continuation of my class quest is locked behind level 30, and I'm at like level 28. So that's on hold for now. And I guess I'm going to go slay some desert lizards because that's what the game wants me to do. So that's where I'll be next week, and moving the main story quest forward, as well as just getting more and more familiar with how to do things. And I really don't know what else to expect, but I'm looking forward to learning more about what is the driving force of the present. I'm like learning what happened 5 years ago, but what is happening in the world today? We see the Empire is up to something. Like, I think they're going to be the cataclysm to something that's going to lead to like, oh, the world is in conflict again. And that's when I'm going to step up and not just be an adventurer, but start. And also, where are those warriors of light? Like, I think that's going to play a big part. Like, they didn't just disappear. They're somewhere. They're doing something. So that's what I want to uncover next. Anyways, I'll see you on the next journal. Thanks for following. And until next time, keep it classy. I've just discovered primals, and I've learned that these things feed off of attention. They need cult followings to stay alive and grow stronger. So basically a Twitch streamer. Welcome back, Classy Crew, to my adventure through Final Fantasy XIV as I attempt to play this game as far as I can make it in the next few months. It's my first time playing. I'm now at level 30, and things are both picking up and slowing down. This game is starting to really show me what everyone means by the monotony of the game, but luckily there's a lot of other things I can do to keep myself busy, like fishing and mining, and I've also got myself a pink goobo named Petey, which is my new best friend. The social aspects and like the unintentional mundane things of this game is what I think really just speaks so much like charm to this game. But before we get into that, let's go over the lore. So last time I was investigating the Amalja and the kidnapping, which this was it actually paid off interestingly for the lore. So it turns out that they're all sacrificing these people to Ifrit, so the first primal that we've come across in the game. And then Ifrit imprints himself on these followers so that he can then grow stronger. And then I don't actually know what the primal's nature is or what they're trying to do. All I know is how they come into being, how they are controlled, and the cycle. So from what I've learned now, because I've finished Ifrit, I finished the Ramu quest line, and I'm actually at the point where I'm now trying to investigate Ralgar. I think that's how you pronounce it. So I'm understanding that the primals are these immortal forces across the world that basically when they are defeated, they go back to like baby form, and then slowly they try to get stronger, and oftentimes the cults help them by following them, giving them that attention, finding other followers for them to imprint, and that helps them grow stronger. Now, do they just want to grow stronger to destroy everything? Do they just want to grow stronger to be a Chad? I don't know. However, from a lore perspective, it's now, that's an interesting element to this world, and the fact that the Scions of the Seven Dawn are all about keeping a tab on all of the primals sounds like a pretty important thing to do. Now, another thing is when I defeated Ifrit, I got a crystal, and we went to this like space with a circle, and the crystal went in there, and there was another crystal from the first thing I got in the forest. Basically, it looks like when I collect 6 crystals, something's going to happen. The only thing I can think about at this stage is that this is going to break a seal, and there's only one thing I know that's sealed in this game, which is Bahamut, and it seems to be in the same digital world. So I'm like, that must not be the case, because there's no way we would want to unseal Bahamut unless the old daddy who died in the trailer is maybe sealed with Bahamut and they're trying to save him. Maybe there's a plot point there that I just thought of now, but otherwise, I'm not sure why we're collecting these crystals or what's going to happen when we get all 6. I understand that there are more than 6 primals, so what's that about? Why is there I don't know. There's more questions than answers at this point. Once I finished Ifrit, I got to pick a company, so everybody's like, oh my goodness, this adventurer, he's so strong. He defeated Ifrit by himself. And so now it's all like, please join us. Help us in Lominsa. No, help us in Gridania, which, by the way, I am sorry for those who watched the last journal. I realized I was saying Gridania incorrectly every time. I think I was calling it Grandia. Anyways, and then there's the folks in Ulda who are like, no, join us. So then we go on this quest to go listen to all the leaders make a really long speech about what their nation stands for, what they're all about. Basically, the Gridanians, they're all about living in harmony with everyone, being a defensive spirit, aka boring. Then we've got the Ulda, which is the fire of passion, and about bringing all the resources and building better, stronger, sort of. Then there's Leminsa, which they're kind of screwed because they're getting boxed in from all sides. They got monsters, they got empires, people backstabbing them. Literally nobody loves, or nobody seems to be an ally of Leminsa. So there's a lot of problems to be had there. So I ended up picking the Immortal Flames. It's what spoke to me the most. I do like that passion, that fire of Ulda. I love the music of that place. I'm tired of the woods, and I'm not into pirates. Sorry, pirate fans. I also got introduced to these twins, which are very mysterious and weird, and they're kind of giving off vibes of being very important characters, especially the lady twin, who doesn't say much. Those are usually the ones you want to keep an eye on the most. After that, we saved 2 new key characters, which is a staple to all Final Fantasy games. We got Wedge and Biggs, which I was pleasantly surprised to see those characters here. They're engineers, which seem to be working on airships. Now they're with the Scions of the Dawn. Scions of the Seventh Dawn. Is there an acronym we could do? Scions of the Seventh Dawn. I don't really know much about the plot there, but now I have unlocked company points. I don't know what they're called, but basically now if I do like company challenges or quests, I can farm this other currency to get other goodies, one of which was a chocobo license, which was very important to me because I am tired of walking. My legs are tired of going all over this world. So I got my chocobo finally, and as a true HJ staple, he is named Classy. So Classy has entered Eorzea as a yellow bird, and I've actually done another quest which lets him fight in combat with me, and I've set him as a healer. So now he is actually proper true Classy. So with that out of the way, the next spot was to go to the Salad Folk, aka the Sylphs in Gridania. Oh my goodness, reading that out loud was a struggle. Finally, fresh air. Mayhap not so fresh, but better than before. So the Salad Folk don't trust the human folk, and we had to do a lot of questing to get their trust. And this questing, there were side quests to the side quest to the side quest to this. Like, we went all over the land, all to learn that the Elder Salad is wilting in a dungeon somewhere, and we have to go save her. And so that was the next dungeon, which was the Thousand Maws of Total Rock. This one was a pretty straightforward dungeon. Vibes, pretty cool. The whole spider and the green, like, icky stuff. I was really expecting a spider boss at the end. Very disappointed it was just scorpions. So overall, the dungeon didn't leave much of an impression on me. The thing I got the most impression on is I actually remember to use my limit break this time, to which I was like, yeah, limit break. And everyone's like, no, you used it on the wrong part of the scorpion. I was like, oh, come on. Anyways, there was like no cool animations or anything, so the limit break was very underwhelming. After that, we got reintroduced to a dark figure who was talking all mysterious about doing some stuff, and then the SSD were all like, hey, those people aren't cool, what are they up to? We should probably keep an eye on those people. So we have Sinister Hood Group, we have Nero and the Empire. We're starting to learn who our villains are, and it sounds like they're all invested in making these primals more primal, if you know what I mean. After that, finish that quest, save the senior salad, and we are off to Alamigo to find Ralger. Now, Alamigo has a very interesting backstory from what I've learned. So this is apparently a territory that's been conquered by the Empire and was never freed. So everyone that used to belong to Alamigo is now basically trying to find a new home. Some of them are living in a mountain called Little Alamigo. Otherwise, they're pretty much shunned wherever they go. So interesting plot point there. Very curious to learn more about what the Empire is doing there, why they invaded there. While I was doing all this, as I hit level 30, my Archer quest line came to an end. And I have to say, there's really not much to say about these class quest lines. Like, the whole quest line is like, oh, there's a little kitty girl and there is a very angry Loki kind of guy. And then the kitty girl, we win her friendship. The broody Loki guy, did we win his friendship? I don't think he'll ever acknowledge it. And we killed another kitty lady. I'm very disappointed in the class quest of the Archer. And now, lucky us, lucky me, I've now unlocked the Bard, which is probably the least impressive class. And I have to say, when I picked Archer, I knew it would evolve into a Bard. And I was like, I almost don't want to pick this, but no, let's go with it. Let's go. And I'm already not impressed with the Bard. I've played it for maybe a half hour, and I'm just not liking the story of the Bard. I'm not liking the thing that they have on the UI that's like music notes now. Just not feeling it. So I'm gonna play it for maybe another week to really give it a solid try, but I'm probably going to switch pretty quick. So one thing I've started doing off stream, my son has started playing the game and he chose Lancer. And so to help him and follow him along, I decided, I might as well, level up my Lancer. And that's been pretty fun to play. I'm at level 5 so far, but I definitely will probably go a more melee class if the Bard does not impress me in the next little while. We're going to switch to a melee class. So with all of that done, there's a few side quests to mention. Like I said, I dabbled in jobs for the first time. I did this all off stream, so F for the editor who has no footage to use. I've dabbled so far in mining, botany, which are basically the same thing, fishing, and cooking. And I have to say, I love the mini games. I had no idea that the jobs were like you equip the weapon and you have a whole different set of skills, hotbar, everything. It's just a lot deeper than what I remember, for example, WoW offering for this sort of stuff. So the mining and botany is great. I love it that like you just turn on your power, you go, and then you hit a tree, hit a rock, and you collect things. That's fun. Fishing was also fun. I mean, when is fishing ever not fun? One thing that surprised me is the cooking. I did not enjoy the cooking. So I cooked a little bit. I think I got up to level 10 in cooking, and I just don't like the mini game of cooking. I don't like the process of cooking. You're just basically buying ingredients or finding ingredients, putting in a pot, and then it's like, oh, you got another one. I think it's more useful in endgame, but for now, it's just, at least with mining and botany and fishing, you're running around, you're trying to find things. It's a little bit more rewarding. So that's where I am with that. While Easter is just around the corner, there's an event quest going on right now where you can get a pink Gubu. And I mentioned how much I like just the name and the design of a Gubu. So to learn that I could have my own pink Gubu was amazing. She's very timid, but I became her best friend. And now we roam the land together, just Petey and I. And she has this very cool trick that she likes to show people when she feels comfortable. She puts out some eggs and little bunnies comes out of eggs. And I really hope that you support her because she worked really hard on this little spectacle for you. And she's just trying to bring cheer to the world. Gubu and I, along with Classy, are now roaming the land with our little Swifty ship. There's one other thing I have to mention. We came across a very eccentric character named Jen Delane, the Esthetician. And I have to say, I really loved how they introduced him. He is quirky character, very I don't even know the word to describe him, but he's a lot of that. And now I can get haircuts at my ends. So I'm looking forward to changing my hairstyle sometime soon, just to, change things up, keep it fresh, see what else looks good on this beautiful character of mine. So that's where we're at. Like I said, Al Amigo is the next stage. We'll see what Ralger's all about. Yeah, a lot of this questing is really heavy in the go here, go there without much reward. There's definitely a slow burn, as people call it, but I'm still invested. The more I dig, the more I'm finding some little nuggets of good stuff. So we're gonna keep digging. And I will see you on the next journal as I make more progress. Until next time, keep it classy. All right, the plot is thickening. It is thickening like a good old soup. I don't know what kind of soup, a stew maybe. We know what the Empire is up to. We know what all these primals are being used for. We have a Sid, a Biggs, a Wedge, and an airship. It's all starting to come together. Welcome back, Classic Crew, to Journal 4 in my journey to play through Final Fantasy XIV up at least until the end of A Realm Reborn to see what my first impression of this game is like. And so far, I've shared how the game is kind of stale. A lot of fun elements, a lot of potential, but the plot is very light, it's very thin, and there's a lot of running around doing mindless things. It's still mostly that, but now there's some bigger elements coming together. So since the last journal, I've now played about 4 streams, so that's roughly 16 hours. Some of you have asked for a level update, not on my character, but on my main story quests. By the time I finished up to now, I am at level 44, so that's what I have done. Last time I was looking at Little Al Amigo or something. We were on the hunt for Ralger. We saw that quest line through till the end, and it was just very anticlimactic. We learned the youth don't like being in Little Al Amigo. They want their homeland back, but they're not strong enough. And then we're like, okay, everything seems cool here. And so we went to the next problem, which was the face thief. This was interesting. So we had a face thief to deal with, and we started investigating that, and that led us to Hockey Manor, which had this whole story of a mage or something who was really obsessed with her beauty herself, and she didn't want to age, so she started stealing other young maidens' faces to stay young. Which, how does that even make sense? You can't just like grab a face and just stretch it over your own face. That's not how beauty works, because if that would work... Anyways, so that was a very interesting dungeon that had Lady Amandine in there. She was the bad lady. So we solved that. We took her face completely off of her head and made sure she's not going to be stealing any more faces from now on. Then we heard, oh no, another Primal is stirring in the deep. This one, Titan, we better do something about it. Hurry, let's, what should we do? Oh, let's go ask the old company of heroes who beat him the last time. And I was like, well, why don't we just ask them to do it? But no, these guys don't want to fight Titan again. They just want to have a banquet. So it really makes me wonder about the seriousness of Primals. This is apparently a company that understands the threat of Primals, has the power to defeat Primals, but when you go ask for their help, they're like,
are these the world's most crispy fries?
Makes no sense at all, but whatever. We had some questing to do, so from this point on, there was a fake dude before meeting all these company heroes. The fake dude was interesting. He had some interesting elements. I like that dude as a character. I fought a rock with him. I beat him. We called him out for what it was. And then I went on the wildest goose chase, which I'm learning is not a one-off, but there are many of these. To earn the favor of the company of heroes, I had to go and get like a frog egg, another kind of egg. I had to get some wine, but then I revived a wine that apparently went extinct during the whole apocalypse, but we found something on one of a Gubu, and now we're good. Also, I have learned that Gubu's piss, which may not sound like an interesting thing, but I'm kind of obsessed with Gubus, and there's a character that said you should go drink some Gubu urine or something. I'm like, yeah, anyways, we got the wine, we got the cheese, we got everything. We threw the banquet, and then they're like, haha, you're one of us now. Here's the secret to get in and fight Titans. So we went down, fought Titan. Some people like to call him a chicken nugget. I don't know why. I don't think he looks like a chicken nugget. Anyways, it was a fun time. He was a lot better than Ifrit, in my opinion. And so I fought Titan. Very cool. Not as muscular as all the other Titans from other Final Fantasy. Pause on the story for a moment, because I did forget to also mention, up to this point, I've been playing on the free trial, but I have finally purchased the Deluxe Collector Mega Super Ultimate Edition, which gives me all of the beautiful candy. And so I now have full access to the game, which means I now have my own retainer, which is what they choose to use as a word, but we all know what this role is. And I dubbed him Chatsworth. So Chatsworth is carrying all of my stuff now. And I got a bunch of new mounts and companions. The most noticeable is the Fat Chocobo, which was one of the things I really wanted. I got a little slime who follows me. I got a melon from a character named Melanie, which was pretty cool until I learned that the melon splits itself. So that gave me a little heart attack. He's a cute little watermelon though. And the companions is really cool. I get some of these characters from Final Fantasy 12. I got, I think his name is Kane from Final Fantasy 4 who follows you. And then this little dragoon thing. While I was unlocking all these things in my inventory, I also came across this thing which was called Fantasia. And I wasn't really reading these things. I just assumed everything was a companion or a minion that needed to be activated. And so I checked this thing with Fantasia, which I now learned that allows me to change my character's gender identity and everything. So every time I log in, I now have to say, no, I don't want to change. That was a mistake. But I like the idea that anytime I can change my gender, because the thing is, in this game, I think the women are way more beautiful than the men. Although the men are quite beautiful as well. I can't go over how handsome my character is. But you look at, I think 90% of the dudes I play with all play as ladies in this game for reasons. Otherwise, I also got gifts now. So I've got good old Takashi, one of the mentors in Final Fantasy 14, who gave me a samurai chocobo outfit. He also gave me a little samurai outfit, which is cool. Everybody is banking on me becoming a samurai at level 50, which, they're probably right. All right, unpause, back to the story. Okay, so we've just beaten Titan. We're going back. We're like, all right, we just did it. This is the second Primal, easy stuff. But then I learned the Scions got ransacked and murdered, and my whole hideout, a mess. So now this is, I feel, where the story starts getting a little bit interesting. We got Minfilia that got captured. Everybody's murdered. There's actually a quest for burying your friends, which is but we say friends. We didn't actually know them on a first name. Although we did know the lettuce. They killed the lettuce, which makes me very sad. So we killed everybody. We didn't kill. We buried everybody, and then we went back to church to pray for them. And here there was an old man, and this is a really funny story. So if you've played Final Fantasy 14, you know I'm referring to Sid. And I know that there's a Sid character in every Final Fantasy game. You know, I recently encountered Biggs and Wedge, so I'm like, when will Sid show up? And anyways, as I'm talking to this cloaked guy that I forget his name, but they gave him a name. Based on what I can see on his face, this guy looks like someone you would name Sid in a Final Fantasy game. And the whole chat was like, oh. I seriously had zero idea this would be a flip, and it's like, aha, I'm Sid. I was like, wow, that's quite the plot twist that caught me by surprise, even though I called it, but it still caught me by surprise. Okay, so we got a Sid. He lost his memory and he lost his airship. All elements which make a fantastic Final Fantasy game. So now we're going on a quest to find the airship dubbed the Enterprise, which crashed 5 years ago in a place called Coertha, which I'm pretty much going to dub Final Fantasy France, because all the names in Coertha are French. And there's all these houses of lords with French names. And so I just decided, for the fun of it, I'm narrating this whole game, by the way, as I go. So if you ever want to see me to do terrible voice acting, join me on twitch.tv/AJOfficial. So I'm doing French accents for all of this. And it's not, racist, because I'm half French. So I can kind of pull off a French accent. I don't know. That said, all these fetch quests in Coertha did set up for a very interesting dynamic of the world, how there are all of these French houses, all these traditions, and that they're all like fighting this kind of like draconian race that's trying to invade their lands, and they're like trying to deal with murders between the houses. Like, it feels a little Game of Thrones-ish. And then we learn that there's a traitor. So long story short, this guy named like Guillaume or whatever his name is, he's an imposter that's trying to get everybody to murder each other. And then we learn he's just one of the dragon dudes, and then we kill him, which, by the way, I actually died. So this is probably one of the first times I died on a main story quest on my own, because the boss killed a guy that wasn't supposed to die, so I wasn't good at pulling the aggro away. So good job, game. You taught me an important lesson here. You've got to keep your aggro away from your NPCs, especially if you're soloing it. So yeah, with that out of the way, it opened up the dungeon where I get the Enterprise, called the Stone Vigil, with a very cool boss. At the end, I'm like, I hope that there's a dragon, a big dragon in this dungeon. And there was. His name was I don't know if I'm saying this right, but it's like Isgebind or something. He was a cool dragon. Fairly easy fight. I've also done another optional dungeon called the Zemil Darkhold, which was all right. And I've started wiping with my parties now, so we're not just breezing through the dungeons. Once it was the healer Blue decided to go for a chest instead of healing us, so we all died. So freaking good job, greedy healer. And then in another one, I think we played wrong and we wiped a few times. So I'm starting to taste defeat now, even in the company of my viewers who are guiding me through these dungeons. So with all of that said, I took a short break once I got the airship back to go and catch up on some of my bard quests. So I did my level 40 and level 45 bard quests, and I have to say, the more I play archer and bard, the more I hate it. Everything about this outside of the gameplay of these classes is terrible. The story, so I have already shared my thoughts on the archer part of the story. The bard, I'm introduced to a mentor, a legendary bard, who I've now learned has basically abandoned the way of the bow because he's ashamed of his past. He's a depressed dude who tries to lose himself in song. And I'm like, oh yeah, because that makes me want to play bard so much. I gotta follow this depressed guy just because he did that. I guess that's the path of the archer now. It's so dumb. I hate it. Because archer could have evolved into so many things, but why bard? And then to top it off, the depressed guy, when he decides he's less depressed, he's like, oh, by the way, I have this legendary clothing which can be yours, except I was so depressed I scattered it around the world in the most inconvenient places. And I'm just like, why am I doing this? And so I went around in the dumbest places to get this coral attire to just look like this. Look at these pants. The hat is nice. I like the hat, but these pants are the most disgusting yoga pants no dude of mine should ever be wearing. So the game, like, not the story, the look, it's just like give me my samurai class. I think I'm 3 levels away from getting the samurai class unlocked, and then I'm going full samurai. Screw this bard melodramatic stuff. Okay, so yeah, we got the ship back so that we could break into Garuda, but she's got a storm around her, and so the airship can't penetrate the storm, so we need corrupted crystals to open up a portal through the thing to go to Garuda, the next Primal. All fascinating stuff, by the way. So I'm off to get this corrupted crystal from a scholar that Sid knew, and this whole thing is another fetch quest just like the freaking Company of Heroes, and the game knows it too, because so the first time you go to the desert, you go get a crystal, and they're like, oh, thank you so much, you did it, you got the fire crystal. I'm like, oh, I need a wind crystal. You should go talk to this lady in the pirate town. So you go there, you do her whole thing of like saving a haunted island and getting that crystal, and she's like, haha, you did it, you got the ice crystal. And you're like, what the go to the forest, they're definitely going to give you the good one. And then you go there, you do some quest of like killing a thing that ate the crystal, and he gets it, he's like, haha, you got the earth crystal. And then you're about to chuck your control, he's like, wait, no, trolling, ha, you got the right one. Thanks, game, thanks for acknowledging that you are wasting my time here. So now we got our crystal, we got backstory exposition on Sid. So now I've learned Sid was part of the Empire, was born into the Empire, was abandoned by his daddy because his daddy needed to do Empire stuff, was adopted by an evil daddy who is now super evil. And he's got a plan to take this like dragon construct that they seem to have built, which is cool. So we fought Garuda, definitely the most interesting Primal fight so far. So best out of 3. And then when we defeat her, you know, she's got some attitude. She's talking. She's like strategic. I like Garuda. Gaius shows up and he's like, haha, you are weak. And she's like, oh, I'm not weak. And then she summons Ifrit and Titan. And she's like, oh, we're going to rule the world. And he's like, ah, perfect. And then he like gets his dragon thing to absorb all 3 primals. And we're like, hold up. This is some bad news. And then he laughs away and we're like, whoa, the Empire is rocking some superpower here. We got to like regroup and rethink what we're doing here. And so now I've left off where I've got Castrum. I've learned Minfilia is in an Imperial base called Castrum Sentry, and I have to go rescue her, and I have to go avoid freaking feeding more primals to the Empire thing. So this is really building up into something. I've gotten all my 6 crystals. Nothing has happened yet. I thought a seal would have been broken when I captured all those crystals, so that hasn't happened. I think I am the Warrior of Light. I don't think the game has outright said it, but they've pretty much strongly suggested it in some of these flashbacks with Sid. So I'm like, that's kind of a plot twist to not be lightly teasing. What are you doing? So I'm the Warrior of Light, I think. So I suspect the Empire, along with the followers of the Moon God, are trying to get access to Bahamut, which is sealed away by the Scions of the Seven Dawns, and they want to unseal it so that they can suck the power, put it into the machine. This is all speculation, by the way, so that they have the most ultimate power and they can rule the world and do what they want with it. And I think the rogue figure have a like-mindedness of like, yeah, let's get Bahamut unsealed. But then I think, the Empire's like, yeah, we're going to steal the power, whereas the followers of Dalamud, they just want Bahamut to come back, and like they want him to destroy, like rule the world. So I think if they do unseal, and then we want to unseal, I think, because I'm collecting crystals. So I think a reason. I think the Scions of the Seven Dawn want to unseal to like save their daddy somewhere. So I think we're all trying to unseal this thing, which sounds like a terrible idea with all different motives. And I think this is where we're heading for the climax. And then what's going to happen after that? Who knows? Everyone tells me A Realm Reborn is just setting the foundation for a greater story. So I'm seeing the foundation being poured. I have no idea what's going to be built on this, though. It just looks like a hole with concrete right now. So that's where I'm at. Those are my thoughts with Final Fantasy XIV. Hope you're enjoying my updates. I'll be back with a pretty significant update because we're getting close to level 50. So I assume that's the end of A Realm Reborn. I don't know. And I'll see you on that next journal. Until next time, keep it classy. So it's 2024, or whatever year it is that you're watching this video, and all your friends have been asking you, you have to play Final Fantasy XIV. It is the best MMO, multiplayer, massive, whatever experience. Well, I'm a new player that just finished A Realm Reborn, and let me tell you, this is what you're in store for. Not the best story ever written. Welcome back, Classy Crew, to the 5th journal in my Final Fantasy XIV journey as I really pretty much just aimed to play this game till the end of A Realm Reborn to see what I thought. And I just finished 2.0, which is pretty much the end of the story with the Empire. I understand that there's more patches, raids, a lot of content I haven't touched, but I wanted to share an update with all of you in terms of what was it like to play this game in 2024, almost 10 years after it released. But I just want to share with you that, well, here's my very brief review of the game. It is a lot shallower than I was expecting from a narrative perspective. Now, I went into this with very low expectations. MMOs are kind of limited in terms of mechanics of what a game can offer. It's not a genre I play much of. I do love Final Fantasy, so I've kind of have an expectation of quality whenever something has the Final Fantasy name. And I have to say, I was expecting a little bit more, even though my expectations were low. I was surprised the game ended as soon as it did, at least for the 2.0 part of the game. And I have to say the ending of it was actually really good, very powerful, and it actually made me appreciate how difficult an MMO can actually be as a single player. So I've always seen the difficulty of MMOs being the coordination between team members when you're doing raids, dungeons, all of that. But the end of Final Fantasy XIV's 2.0 content puts you not just with team-based combat, you have to solo certain bosses with really demanding mechanics, which I was totally not expecting for MMOs. So if you're watching this saying, is it worth me getting into Final Fantasy XIV? Where I am today, I cannot recommend that investment of your time, because from what I'm told, the game starts getting better after the point where I'm at today. So where I'm at today, which is roughly 40 hours into the game, it's a nice little side game to enjoy yourself in with a pretty powerful ending to the story. But if you're gonna stop there, it's just not worth picking up, in my opinion. Now, my opinion's probably going to change significantly as I get into the post 2.0 content, which I'm told is when the story picks up. I also have to keep in mind this game was pretty much rushed out in order to save the 1.0 version of the game, which is no longer available. So I understand everything that this game, its development cycle, what it was faced with, and also recognizing it's an old game. So I'm not bashing it, but I think I'm giving it the valid criticism it deserves, while still appreciating the surprises it delivered. So with all of that in mind, we're going to dive into an update as to where I left off last time. I was about to go storm, what was it called? The Mordana, which is an Imperial base. That is where they were keeping Minfilia, which is one of the scions of the Seventh Dawn. And basically, that's what I needed to do. I needed to save her. And what I've learned is this pretty much is the cataclysm for taking on the Empire head on, which is what surprised me. I wasn't expecting for the game's story to escalate so quickly, but I'm happy that it did, because this has been some of the best content Final Fantasy XIV has handed so far. So last time we heard word that Biggs and Wedge had escaped captivity in Corythus, and then we had to go save them, so I had a little bit of quest to do that. Then we relocated to Mordana. You know what? I think I said it wrong. Mordana is the Alliance place. The bad place that we're invading is Castrum Country, which is the Imperial city where Minfilia is, or Imperial base where Minfilia is being held. So from Mordana, we're doing all these scouting missions, learning how to do an Imperial salute, learning how to dress like an and then also stealing their mech and putting a heart in it so that it becomes our very own loving Maggie mech. I think they called it Maggie. And this mech becomes quite significant in just a few hours from this point. So going into Castrum, once you do all your preparation, you pretty much storm Castrum Sentry to save Minfilia. And it's a pretty light dungeon. I have to say what I did enjoy and didn't expect is the fact that there's these minions and mechs that come in and they're invulnerable, and you're like, oh, what do I have to do? And you actually have to like go around. Actually, this is not a dungeon because I think I do this all solo, but you have to basically go around and find these shield generators which are keeping these mechs invulnerable. You got to shut those down so you can attack them. So very cool mechanic there that caught me by surprise. And then we get huge plot twists. Did not see this coming, but we've learned the whole time that the hooded figure La Brea was actually Thancred, which I did not see at all. Like I was not even aware when the Dawns, or the Scions of the Seven Dawn, all got wiped out. I'm like, oh, Thancred probably just got captured with the rest of them, and he's not noteworthy because there's a bunch of other Scions that don't get a lot of screen time. So I figured, Thancred of all people, why are you the masked figure. So from what I understand, the masked figure, Thancred himself is not bad. He's just being possessed by a bad force. So he's basically a vessel, which kind of takes a bit of the sting away. He wasn't actually bad the whole time. He just fell with some bad people and now has been corrupted. But good job, Final Fantasy. Was not expecting that plot twist, and I love being surprised like that. And the Empire is now in full force to take over the world with their newfound Ultima weapon that is fully armed and operational. So I like this part because we get to see the heads of the cities all like go, oh, what do? We should just maybe Imperial rule is not that bad. And they just kind of reflect, and they're starting to like give in until I show up and I'm like, no, we're gonna fight. We're not gonna let them bully us around. What are we gonna do after that? And they're all like, oh, ha ha, in the most cringiest like laughing scene I have seen. So the English dub for this was really, really bad. Anyways, so I basically stir them to fight. We come up with this awesome like 4-phase plan to take on the Empire, which I really enjoyed the strategic nature of it and how they actually described it with a map. Like I was really getting into the story at this point. And then the first phase of the fight is I have to go and fight Ridadin Sas Arvina, which is like the big bulky Imperial commander dude. And this fight was my first wall in Final Fantasy XIV. I finished the stream on this fight, and it is so endgame Final Fantasy trope in the sense that it never ends. So we get phase 1, and I'm like, okay, I gotta navigate this. It's one-on-one too, so there's a lot of like attacks being launched. I'm just moving around, also trying to cycle through all of my abilities. And then at the end of phase 1, he's like, oh, now I'm gonna give it my all. And he just starts like blasting you, and it's at a point where you either have to kill him or he's gonna kill you because he just doesn't stop blasting these like powerful blasts. Then he goes down. Then phase 2, we get minions coming out of everywhere, and he's like unleashing attacks on you while you're dealing with all the minions. And then it's like, oh, phase 3, I'm totally not down. Now I'm even more powerful than before. I'm like, oh my god, let's go. And it's even more intense, and you're going to move around. And this is the moment I realized MMOs can be difficult. Some people could say, oh, it's just clicking and pushing the buttons and waiting, and then you just like move around. Yes, but when you drive the intensity of all that up, so at this point you are constantly required to move because the whole floor is lava. And then I'm still not familiar enough with my button rotations that I actually have to look. Like it's not a matter of not looking. So I have to constantly be looking at my menus of what's on cooldown, what can I push now, while still also looking at the map and the positioning. So like that management of resources and attention is actually quite tough, and it feels intense, and it's not a feeling I was expecting from an MMO. So that was surprising. And then you finally beat him, you go to cutscene, he's on the ground, and you're like walking away. Never would I have thought we would have went from battle to cutscene to another phase, but here we go, phase 4. And this is a little bit bullshit. He pulls you in, anchors you to the ground, and now he's just wailing on you, so you can't get out of any of his attacks. And I learned that this is pretty much a DPS race. You just have to kill him before he kills you. And I, like, the first round, I was like, do I really have to do this? This seems hard. Then I died. I was like, oh, maybe I was just supposed to die. Like, you know, in old RPGs, sometimes there are fights you just can't win. I really thought that was the case here. And then it goes game over screen. I was like, what? I'm supposed to actually win this? So I go back and I'm like, oh my God, okay, how am I going to do this? So I read all my tooltips. I add high potions to my menu. And so I go back in again, a lot more prepared, which is great. This is what walls do to me. And I assume what they do to everyone. And so I go in and, you know, phase 1, 2, 3, because you got to restart from the beginning. And then I'm just like going in maxed out. I'm like, all right, first get my dots up. Then I get all these things. My triple attack, let's use my strongest ability. So it hits 3 times. And I'm just like, boom, 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 DPS. And our health bars are like depleting at the same rate. I was like, oh my goodness, this is not. And then like the screen changes and I thought, I'm like, oh, I died. I had 49 HP left the moment he died. He did an attack that did like 200-300 HP on me. And through sheer luck, I actually won that fight. So then I checked after the whole cutscene and everything. So I defeated the first Imperial commander. People are like, what's your equipment like? It shouldn't be like that hard at this point. So I pull up my weapon and I learned I had like a level 30 bow still equipped. So I never grinded out good gear. I was still like on this garbage stuff. So that made me actually more proud that I actually defeated that fight with an under I don't know, underskilled bow or weapon or armor. It really goes along with kind of my journey through Monster Hunter, where I'm always underprepared and somehow make it through. And that makes me feel good. That's how I like to play my games. So yeah, I got through that, and then the game really like opened up to the next phases. There was a few other things I did before jumping into the final segment of the game, which is dungeon after dungeon after dungeon, which I really love the momentum of how they handled the end game. So I did go off and do another optional dungeon that I just missed. That was like a level 38 one called Cutter's Cry. In there's a chimera that you fight. There was nothing really notable other than I don't think I understood the mechanic because I kept getting hit by the chimera mechanic. So not much I can say there. I also took the time to go out and level up my bard to level 50. So I got all of the abilities for endgame. I also got the best drip, the official drip of the archer. So I got the missing chest piece, which kind of makes everything else work a little better, but I'm still not a fan of these yoga pants. The hat is still though pretty good. So now I've got all of my abilities. I look a little bit better. I also got a level 50 bow from Firelord Vaughn at this point, one of the community members. So I was ready to now go into the dungeons, and we had pretty much rotating groups to go through the dungeons. So at the end, you go into Castrum Meridianum, pretty much the outside of the Imperial fortress, the main one that has Ultima weapon. And in there, the only notable thing I have to mention is Livia Sas Junius, which was not expecting to just be knocking out all the main commanders. That's why I'm like, oh wow, we're really speeding through the story here. So at the end, we learned that she's pretty much just a simp for Gaius. I pronounced it wrong last time. Gaius is the right way. And she kind of fell a lot easier than I was expecting, considering her reputation, how they built her up in the story. And then right after that dungeon, it's like, let's go, more dungeon. Let's go into the inner dungeon, which is the Praetorium. And there was a lot of good stuff in here, including the fight with Nero. I kind of like his hammer and his armor. Also learn more about his backstory and how it relates to Cid, and how he's been pretty much has an inferiority complex to Cid. So that was interesting. Did not kill him, just beat him up a bit. So he's going to come back and play a part, I think. Then we have a whole segment with the mechs, which is pretty cool because you get to actually use the mech to just blast things and just make your way. So I really like that they added that mechanic. All this leads to the longest monologue on an elevator I've ever seen with Gaius. We're on an elevator and he's just monologuing away about kind of the rule of power and what things are. Gaius is a very interesting villain. I really like the way that they wrote him. He's a man of vision. You got to give him that. Even though his vision is a little negative for the world, at least the guy knows what he wants, and he's very, very clear about it. So we get to the bottom of the elevator. We fight Gaius. He goes into gold form Gaius, which for some reason in Japan, going gold form is even more intense. Here, I learned a new mechanic in the fight, which we call the friendship mechanic. So there's these arrows pointing at you, and basically everybody has to run in together. And it took me a few times to get it because nobody tells me these mechanics. They let me figure it out myself, which I like. So that's a cool mechanic. There's also another one where these arrows pushing out. So that one I figured out quick. I'm assuming this thing's going to blast me away. So when you see that, you have to run towards the center. So you limit how much you get blasted away. So these are mechanics I've never seen in MMOs before. Again, my experience with MMOs has been limited, but really enjoying how much depth they are able to put into MMO combat. It's just not something I thought that was possible. All of that ends, and then right away it's okay, now it's time for your trial. You're going to go against the Ultima weapon. And I'm just oh my goodness, it's just more, it's like a freaking 12-layer cake of dungeon and bosses. So we go Ultima weapon, and then this is a pretty fun fight. Oh, forgot to mention the most important part of all of these fights, the best song. So Answers has been one of my favorite songs on the soundtrack so far. But now I think it's called Steel Resolve. I wrote it somewhere. Not here though. Which plays for each commander. This song just pumps me up and it just makes me feel so heroic, and again, added to favorite playlist at this point. Where was I? Ultima weapon. Yeah, so now I'm playing, fighting Ultima Weapon, and we're pulling all of the, what do you call them, icons away from him. So we get Titan out, we fight Titan, and then we get the Garuda out, and then we get Ifrit out. And, this feels like I'm progressing. I'm I'm weakening Ultima Weapon, and then we beat him down, and the guy's no, you're breaking my weapon. How is it possible? And then La Habrea shows up. He's fools. The real reason of this is to cast Ultima magic. I was oh, there's another Final Fantasy trope. And so Ultima happens. Guys is mad because he's no, it wasn't supposed to end this way. I didn't want to do this much damage or something. I don't know. I thought we were going to win over guys at this point. Like, he seems like a guy who could be turned to be like a reluctant ally against a greater evil. So now Ultima weapon again, we fight, we beat it. The whole time the Crystal Goddess is on our side, shielding us from these like intense blasts, and she's getting weak. And then we go into the La Brea fight one-on-one, which is again another intense fight. I didn't feel it was as hard as Rutatin, but intense. Like, I'm just focused and like but doing my coordination and just feeling the adrenaline, because this game is just like so intense. And then we beat him, and then we get into this like awesome like finale. We're with the light crystal. All our friends come together. We got the power of friendship. We blast La Brea away and get back Thencred. I think we got back Thencred, if I remember. And pretty much we go straight into credits with like a very short end scene, some monologuing. Everyone's like, aha, we're all good. Credit, playing answers. It's all good times. And then boom, we hear the Bahamut. Which honestly, I forgot to mention, this, I thought for sure Bahamut was the final boss of this game of 2.0. And I say it in all my journals. I'm trying to like put together the plot threads. I thought we were all going to Bahamut, but it sounds like Bahamut is a post 2.0 patch, and this is what we're being set up with. So that threw me for another twist too. Like, I looked way too much into the story, unless it all unravels in post 2.0. But yeah, this is why I was a little like, oh, this is not as deep as I was expecting for the 2.0 story. And it's just like, okay, I'm on board. What's going to happen next? And so everything ends. We're back at the Waking Sands, I think, the base of the Scions. And the communities tell me in chat, they're like, come outside, come outside. I was like, all right, what's going on outside? So I come out to see a wall of mechs. I was shocked at just how many people had come together all in their mechs. And I walk out and everyone's like celebrating because I finished the 2.0 endgame. And then I've also unlocked the ability to fly with my mounts, and I got my own mech too. So I got to equip my mech, and then we all took to the sky and we're just flying everywhere. It looked like a bunch of bees everywhere, but like, those are the special moments that you get out of MMOs that you just cannot get out of a single player game. And it felt so special. Like, I always see maybe 3, 4, 5 people from my community that are either hovering in the background doing stuff. So to step out and see like 20, 30 mechs that were all on board, I'm like, I was shocked that there were so many people like this. And I get not everybody there was part of the community. There was a lot of people there that were just, I think, jumping on board, seeing that there was like something happening. But it was such a cool moment. And then, yeah, so I messed around with that. And then just before logging off that night, I went back to Ul'dah, and there was a band playing some music, like some pop music. And I was like, I recognize that music. And when I just sat there with some people listening on stream, like the music that was being played by the Crystal, by these performers, like these actual human performers that were just playing in the game. And all of that was just so cool. Like, I went to bed that night with like my heart full. It was so fulfilling. I got a good ending to a story. I got like this amazing community moment. And, you know, that is the reason that I think these games are worth it, when you really get hooked into a community. I'm lucky because I make content online and I have a community. But even if you don't, I really do believe that when you start these games, you can find one, because the people that play this recognize that's the special part of the game, and they're constantly looking to enrich other people's experience. At least that's what I'm seeing. Even when I wasn't doing content, like when I was playing old MMOs, it was the same thing. People are usually there to help you and are usually there to ensure that you're having a good time, because ultimately it's this fictional world that we're all having a good time in. So thank you, community, for making my 2.0 ending fun and memorable. And now I really look forward to seeing what's coming up next. And in fact, up to this point, I've been saying I'm on vacation playing Final Fantasy 14. I've now played it over a month, and I think it's time that we commit a little bit more and bring out the pledge bottle. So if you're new here, I always enjoy doing pledges when I'm playing games. I always like to make them a little spicy. Upon the bottle of pledge, I pledge to play and complete Heavensward. The spicy part is there's a time limit. I have to do this by June 30th, 2024. The consequence if I do not do it is the next game I'm playing is Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. If I cannot complete Heavensward by June 30th, 2024, the community, all of you, get to decide the condition of my hunts for all of low rank, meaning you choose which weapon I have to play with. And so upon the pledge bottle, I pledge it. And I will see you on the next Journal of Final Fantasy XIV. We now have 2.5 months to get through post ARR and Heavensward, or else Monster Hunter Generations U is going to suck in the beginning. I'll see you next time, and until then, keep it classy. As part of my pledge to complete Heavensward before June 30th, which is a few weeks away, I have to get through patch 2.1, 2.2, and all those other patches, and my biggest challenge is staying awake. This is the most boring RPG I've ever played. Welcome back, Classic Crew, to the 6th journal in my Final Fantasy. I tried to make 6 there, whatever. In my Final Fantasy XIV journey to make it to the end of Heavensward. Now that I have dabbled in the game, gone a taste for it, I have pledged to make it to the end of Heavensward. And the first thing I have to say is this is a rough part of the game. I was really ready when I got into a Realm Reborn. People told me it was very slow, it was setting a foundation. And for the most part, it was okay. There was some like drawn out parts, but we ended on a high last time. We defeated the Empire, we had some cool dungeons, some cool boss fights, everything was going well, credits rolled, and we even got a Bahamut roar, which I'm like, okay, we're going into finally gonna fight Bahamut and stuff. I've been away for the last 2 weeks, just sleeping. This has been so boring from a story perspective. Despite me being gone for 2 weeks, all I have done so far is the Scions, the SSDs, whatever, they decided to move from the desert place to a cold mountainous place, which looks like a castle, so it's an improvement. A dragon lady that we're not supposed to know is a dragon lady, which I'm also not supposed to call a dragon lady, but I forget the race name, has shown up looking all ninja-like, but she has a dragon tail, so, you know, it's kind of gives it away what race she is. Oh, and I guess I fought a Leviathan. That's a pretty big deal. And a Moogle King, both of which have freaking amazing songs. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Outside of those highlights, the story has been super dry, simply because it's so drawn out of go here, and I know that's what an MMO is, but I've been doing it for 40 hours in a Realm Reborn, and it wasn't this bad where we're going here and going there, but the plot is just not moving. It's like, oh, can we just get on with it? So luckily, I have a lot of side activities to kind of like keep me going and finding things interesting. The first thing I decided to do as I hit level 50, since we finished 2.0, is get me out of these yoga pants. I cannot play Bard anymore. Honestly, this was probably the biggest mistake I've done for this game, was choosing the path of the Bard, like being Archer than a Bard. I really thought I would have enjoyed it, but everything from the class story to the gameplay, I now understand is all bad for me. Might be good for you, but it's bad for me. So the first thing I did is, let's change this up. Let's go Marauder. Give me my axe. Let me attack things face to face. And oh, so much adrenaline. It just felt good to whack things. And I also learned that other classes outside of Bard have combos, which that actually adds a whole other level of dopamine to my like clickety clackety. So now I actually get to have to like be a little bit more smart with what I'm tapping, and I get to combo things, which is super satisfying to do. Another thing is I have never tanked in an MMO before, so I got to experience what it was like to tank, and for the most part, it was pretty okay, until the chat took me to Orm Vale and decided to spank me for no reason. We're going to talk about that soon. But just the experience of tanking, I've always been intimidated by it, because I know a tank is what leads the pace of a party, and it's a lot of responsibility. Like, you're supposed to aggro everything, you're supposed to keep your party safe, you are the center of attention, which I'm okay with most of the time, but that's a lot of responsibility in a dungeon. That said, it was pretty fun to smack things around, so I figured let's go, and the free company I'm with have been helping me in dungeons, so I haven't been playing with randoms, and they've been very kind. But I've also heard that the Final Fantasy XIV community is very kind towards new players, and so even if I didn't have a company, apparently I would have been greeted and taken care of nicely, unlike what my chat did in Orm Vale. Anyways, the initial tanking experience was quite lovely. I really enjoyed it, and it was just kind of nice that I get to go around and I throw my axe at things, and I'm like, oh, come here, and I like do my AoEs, and I'm just like getting all that aggro. It felt good. And then eventually some people were telling me about wall to wall, which was a term I didn't know about, and they were telling me that, oh yeah, like the pros, once you get like comfortable enough, it's wall to wall, you just go and the healer is keeping you alive. So I asked if I could have that experience, and I think we did it in the Copper Bell Mines, I think it's what it's called. And the healer was like, go for it, just go wall to wall, go nuts. And that was a whole other rush of dopamine. That was so fun to just like run until you can't run anymore, and then it's just like stomp, 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 and kill everything. It was super fun until we got to Aurum Vale. So I was doing dungeons and fates to level up my marauder to my warrior, and for some reason, everybody got really excited about Aurum Vale. I didn't know the reputation of Aurum Vale before playing the dungeon. Set some context here. I was a little tired that night. My brain was just not there. And so far, I had no issues playing this game in any capacity. And the chat was all being like sneaky, and everybody was trying to like fight over each other as to who could do Aurum Vale with me. And so I go into Aurum Vale, and suddenly I knew something was up, because the whole free company here was definitely not playing the way they usually do. They just scattered and started aggroing everything, and we were dying and everybody was laughing. I'm like, why are we all laughing? Usually we're not laughing when we're dying. And I was not laughing because it was not a good experience. I was basically dying. Everybody was laughing. I didn't know why. It was chaos everywhere. There were scorpions, there were Malboros, there was poison swamp, and long story short, it caused some tension. And I came to understand afterwards that there's a tradition in the community of Final Fantasy XIV that you take a sprout through Aurum Vale, and it's like a trial of passage. Can they make it through this? And honestly, as a sprout, I have to say, stupid tradition. I had been a tank for no more than mere, 5-6 hours. I barely knew what I was doing. So the joke or whatever failed on me because I was already not an aggressive tank. I was playing very cautious, and I'm still trying to learn my rotations and stuff. And so to be thrown into a dungeon and just like aggro, push all your buttons, why aren't you doing it right, was just not an enjoyable experience. I was overwhelmed, it was chaos, I was dying, and so what I ended up doing was just planting my foot down and being like, we are not moving anymore, we're aggroing this room, we kill this room, we move on. I don't know how much of the chat was listening, but anyways, we made it forward, and there was a conflict between myself and my chat where I was like, that was not fun, why'd you guys do that? But then they sent me a bunch of videos explaining the thing. So if you are one of those Aurum Vale marauders, call yourself out in chat, because shame on you guys. That is not a fun experience. Even the story of Warrior is way more interesting than Bard. You've got, it's a warrior story. It's all about fighting big monsters, protecting the kids, being a big hero. And then you even have one of the best side characters called Curious Gorge. That's it, Curious Gorge, who is like teaching you how to become a better warrior. And to some level you can respect him because he does know moves you don't, and he's teaching them to you. And then you clash with him because the guy goes crazy with his like bloodlust. Then you get all this magical armor. So much better than the depressive bard who doesn't want to shoot an arrow because he's sad, so he picks up the harp. After that sour note, I was a level 50 warrior. It was a good time, but I had also heard that I could be a samurai, which is something I enjoy being in my games, and I decided to go and try. Since I don't have to grind it, let's go see what samurai is about, so that way I'll have a tank class at level 50 and I'll have a fun DPS class at level 50. You know, there's a like legend just sitting around the gladiator ring who has a katana, and everyone's like, who's this guy? He's like beating up everybody, and he basically takes you under his wing, and he's like, oh, you're gonna be a fine samurai, I'm gonna teach you everything I know. I'm like, I can get down with this. I respect this master who is beating up everybody, knows what he's all about, and just knows he wants to be a teacher. Like, everything checks the list for being awesome mentor, awesome class. And on top of that, playing the samurai class is also fun. You want combos? Here's 3 combos with a super finishing attack, plus you get your AoE combos. It's just everything the warrior was giving me, but like a 3-scoop sundae. Like, so there's these 3, I mean, you guys know how to play Final Fantasy XIV, but for those who watch this for some reason who don't, you've got these 3 like little stickers, I guess people call, and you do 1 combo, you get 1 sticker. You do the other combo, you get 2 stickers. You get a 3rd combo, and they're all different combos, you get the 3rd sticker. Once you have all your stickers combined, you summon Captain Planet. I mean, you summon your ultimate move, which just looks so cool, feels so cool. It's just awesome. And if you don't have 3 stickers, you can do a cool finisher at 2 stickers or 1 sticker. They all do different things. And then
there's your AoE combos. You have AoE combo 1, AoE combo 2, and you have an AoE finisher. It is so far the best class. Everything has just been better. I'm glad I started at the bottom with Bard because everything has just been fantastic. So that's another thing. And then because the story was so boring, I also did the Final Fantasy 16 event, which is going on right now. Now, I don't think I can appreciate this event as much because I didn't play Final Fantasy 16 because they didn't bring it to Steam yet. Put it on PC, remove it from exclusivity, please. But I got to, what I really liked about this whole like side story was there was a fight with Ifrit who looked way cooler. I think this is Final Fantasy 16 design, which is way better than the Final Fantasy 14 one. And just the mechanics of this one, it added a mechanic which I think is further along in FF14. It just made the fight so cool with counters. Like as soon as I like saw the animation, after I learned I didn't have to do it on command, but I could do it just based on the animation cue. It became a really satisfying fight at the end of just like countering Ifrit and smacking him and punching him. And I got rewarded with no, that's not true. I got rewarded with a dog that I can fly with now. But later, I did Ifrit hard mode, which is now unlocked, and that one got me a really cool sword. That's what I was going to mention. So I got like this flaming sword, which is glowing red, super awesome. And I didn't get it on the first drop because someone in the free company decided to greet or need it, and they're like, I wanted the sword. And I'll call him out. He's on every comment. His name is Adventurer. If you see him down there. The rest of the chat got pretty angry at ads and they're like, why are you taking Jay's sword? And then they got back in there unsynced or something. They basically pounded Ifrit in like 2 seconds and they gave me my sword so that I was happy. I felt like being at a baseball game where there's like that other kid that steals the baseball for the one kid that was clearly supposed to catch it. And then like, you know, the dad gets involved and goes and gets the baseball because to make the kid stop crying. So that's what happened to me. And I got a nice sword out of it. It was nice. Garuda hard mode also done. I still have to go get my Titan hard mode quest, and I hear that after I finish that, I unlock a special raid or something, and that's where the Bahamut fight is, which is weird that it's not integrated into the story, but whatever. Lost opportunity, FF14 devs. So going back to the story, or what's of it, yeah, so now that we have that the Scions of the Seventh Dawn have become this renowned force of power and everything, they've decided that they can't be in any one territory, and that they want to be neutral and not have influence or have perceived influence from any of the big kingdoms. And so we all moved to Mordana, which is honestly better town. There's an ether crystal there, so I can actually teleport without opening up a letter. And we started investigating this other thing in the woods. For some reason, the Mughals summoned the good King Mughal Malgus the 12th, which has the first song with lyrics outside of answers in any kind of battle that I've had. So that was pretty cool. It was a very like quirky fight, and I just really enjoyed. It was like a twisted comedic but horror kind of sounding song. Very interesting. I was fascinated with that one. It's unfortunate though the lyrics weren't clear, but I did listen to the song after with lyrics just on my own on YouTube, and it's a very catchy song. So after this, the plot, we got introduced to another more robed figures. So now we've got Elidibus. I think he's the one in white. And there's another guy. These look like typical Square Enix villains, especially Kingdom Hearts villains. Yeah, so anyways, the moving, it took like 2 hours. Go talk to this person. Go find Minfilia's mom. Do you know about Minfilia's dad? Why can we not just pack our bags and move? And then an interesting character shows up, Yugiri, from another land, from afar, and she's got like the dragon tail. I think this would have been better if it was experienced at the time that the patch came out, because I was like, what's this? Why is she all covered and everything? And then people told me, oh, at the time that they introduced her in the story, there were no whatever the dragon folk are called. So seeing someone that was like, you know, all disguised with a dragon tail was like a tease for the next race being introduced, which I would have been like, cool. And then later on, you see her like fight in a way that no other characters fight. And I'm like, wait, is that ninja moves? And everyone's like, yeah, that was a tease for the ninja job that was going to be introduced at the time. So I can appreciate it, but like the fact that all of that exists now, it's kind of just taken away from a story like power perspective. But Yugiri is like bringing a bit of freshness to the story, and it's interesting. You know, now I know that the Empire is up to no good on another continent somewhere. She's here with refugees. She's joining me. I really am dying to see what she looks like. And it's starting to pick up again. But again, oh my God, the whole refugee storyline. Go talk to this person. We got to convince that they want refugees. Oh, now we got to bring the refugees to this place. You can't bring them all at once. Bring them partially. And you got to like talk to everybody. It's like, oh my goodness. To be fair, it's very realistic, but it's just like, let's get to the good stuff, because I can feel that there's so much good stuff out there, but it's just world building so slowly, and I guess like that's what you need sometimes, but man, it's hard to keep awake. And then we ended on a high note thanks to Leviathan. So yeah, these other creatures summoned Leviathan, they prayed to him, and I got introduced to one of the best Leviathan soundtracks ever, where it's like a heavy metal song that's actually going like Leviathan. It sounds like something out of old school Power Rangers. It's really cool. The fight was fun, and that's where we ended. So I think I have another quest or two, and I will be done 2.2. In my pledge, there's roughly like 8 or 10 weeks, I don't know, I didn't count it, to get to the end of Heavensward. So it's a pretty daunting task. But we're going to be going into 2.3 and hopefully 2.4 in the next week. I'm told the good stuff's coming, so I'm just buckling down and getting ready for this. Now at least I got a samurai class to have fun with. And hey, there's all these like little side adventures I can have with my chat too. Except Aurum Vale, we're not doing that again. I'll see you guys next time, and until then, keep it classy. So I've just finished a Realm Reborn properly, and I am feeling things. Final Fantasy games don't usually get so Game of Thrones-ish. I am shook. Friends, we have a lot to unpack today. The whole reason you're grinding, the whole reason you are struggling through these quests is to get to this part where you go, oh, I gotta keep playing, because now we've got this emotion of revenge because everybody's screwing us over. They're killing our favorite little princess girl. All the Lalafels are evil, and I need blood and to murder all of these people who have done me wrong. Like, this is some political heavy business. I probably wouldn't have appreciated it as a younger Jay, but as old me who did enjoy Game of Thrones until they went the wrong way, this is some next level plot building, manipulating, and I'm happy to say I did not see this coming, which is good, because I feel like I can usually see like some story based. I knew something bad was going to happen with this banquet scene, the famous banquet scene, the final very long cutscene of A Realm Reborn. And there's other stuff I did too. I usually lay it out. I'm not doing that this time because we got to talk about this critical plot point, which just suddenly came out of nowhere. We knew there was treachery. We knew that there was a lot of evil. You know, we've been dealing with dragons. We've been dealing with Ascians. We've been dealing with empires. What else have we been dealing with? But the level of treachery here is not like, this game keeps being like, hey, you see this big dragon that came out of the moon? And I'm like, yeah, that's the villain. They're like, no, that's not the villain. It's never been the villain. The villain has been by your side the whole time. All the friends you made along the way are all the villains. So, man, where do we even start to unpack this? Like, you know, the fact that they freaking murdered Nanamo, like, props to having the balls to do that, because that's a good way to really kind of, you know, put a wound into the player's heart. She was the most wholesome, and she was planning something that you're like, this is definitely going to fix the politics. Yeah, get rid of the monarchy, make it a republic. There's going to be problems with that, but this is a good step forward. And you're all like in her room with her, and she's telling you this, and you're like, this is a good plan. I'm really feeling this plan. Go for it. And then, boom, I was not expecting poison. Like, that caught me so off guard. And then on top of that, to be accused, I was like, of course they're going to accuse me. Of course this little Telegia is going to accuse me, but he's not going to get away with it. But then they planted, the freaking Crystal Braves planted the vial with the poison on me, which I'm like, why did I go, like, earlier they make you go on this quest for the Crystal Braves, and you just end up picking this vial. I was like, what was the point of that? And then when they're like, he has the vial on him, I'm like, oh, you son of a traitor. Like, and then it just all falls apart there. And then we get into the confrontation with Raban, and this is really like where like the game is really building my anger towards Telegia Adeleji. I'm like, oh my goodness, Telegia Adeleji is going to take over the kingdom. I'm going to be like exiled with the Scions. We're all going to be branded evil. And the whole like Heavensward arc is all going to be about having a revenge. This is so much like Game of Thrones when the certain kingdom gets screwed over and then you're like, oh, we're so going to get revenge. But then the Red Wedding happens. But anyways, another twist. Let's decapitate Telegia Adeleji, which satisfying, but also I wanted to do that. So my emotions went from sad to revenge to, oh, you little potato, to, oh, he died. Okay, what next? But then there's Lolorito, who's this other Lalafell, and I'm like, oh, here's another
little Lalafell to hate. And then there's the Crystal Braves Lalafell. So literally, I went from, little Lalafell, you're cute, to, man, these things are evil. Every Lalafell in this cutscene, outside of the one guy I didn't write his name down because he's the one that saves you in the end, they're freaking evil. Oh, and of course, Nanamo, precious Nanamo. We don't talk bad about Nanamo. And this, maybe, I don't know how I feel about this. He's the guy that they want us to hate. He's like set up as the villain who actually was pulling all the strings. But we didn't get to hate him enough. All our hate went into Teleji Adeleji, and then the hate flew off with his head. And I'm like, I wasn't ready to redirect all that hate into, I really have struggled with these names, into Lolorito. But then, as we're about to build up some hate for Lolorito, Raban is all like, oh, I'm going to kill you too, you little Lalafell. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then there's freaking Ilbert? Is it Ilbert? What's his name? Ilbert, who my chat has been playing up against me of like, good old Ilbert. I like Ilbert. So I'm like, well, if the chat likes him, I should like him too. He seems like a pretty stamped up guy. No, he's a traitor too. Everybody's a traitor. No, chat's probably a traitor too. They're in on all of this. In fact, they were against me during the whole cutscene, accusing me of murder. So you know what, chat? You're all traitors to me. You're all dead to me. You're all a bunch of Lalafells. Except for Takashi. He's a good Lalafell. And then we lose the left arm, which I'm like, oh, that's why the achievement is my losing a left arm or something. I forget what the name is. But on my screen, you can see that I've added a pledge tracker now when I'm playing these games. And the last one was something about losing a left arm. I was like, who's going to lose a left arm? Why are we losing a left arm? Is it symbolic of like, someone's right hand, as in like the person next to someone is going to be lost? Nope, it was actually Roban's left arm, which is gone. So man, Roban was all of us in that cutscene. Like all the feelings we were feeling, Roban's just like, screw politics, let's just murder things. But yes, murder things. But then he got screwed over. And then we have to escape, which I'm like, oh no, this is all falling apart. And then we're seeing all of the Scions. Props to the Scions for all sacrificing themselves for me. But also on the other hand, the whole point of this was to escape together. And none of the Scions escaped. I'm like, this is turning into a worse and worse escape plan. Like at first we lost Ida and Papalimo, which I'm like, okay, that's okay. And we got to see Ida's eye. So it was kind of cool to see them. But then we got a fade to white. I'm like, they want us to think they maybe died. I'm like, oh, whatever. That's a played out trope. But then we have the next scene with Thancred and Ishtola. And then Thancred takes an arrow to the knee. I'm like, oh, there goes his adventuring days. But then they also have a fade to white. I'm like, why are they killing off all of the Scions here? And then finally Minfila also sacrifices herself so I can run away. Also fade to white. So I'm like, okay, they've done it too many times. There's no way they would kill all of the Scions in this way. They're going to show up later on in some capacity. Like I just was not feeling they would do a bigger deal if they were killing them off. And then we ran off and now we're in exile of the land. Everybody hates us. We've got just me, Tataru, what's his face? Man, Alphino. I don't know if it's been showing through these journals, but I have developed a huge annoyance for Alphino. And it kind of, I think this like momentous cutscene has really cemented what I was feeling, which is, Alphino is going around the realm being all like, oh, Tish Tosh, warrior of light, follow me, do all these things. And he's like, oh, my crystal braves. And he's so annoying because he thinks he has an answer for everything. He's got like his little army. He's like, oh, my crystal braves. And he like name drops that all the time like it's super secret club. Well, sir, your crystal braves are traitors and it's all your fault. Now luckily, and this was a really soothing cutscene, in following cutscenes we just see Alphino being really sad and actually feeling the weight of all of his mistakes. I'm like, yeah, it is all your fault. Stop thinking you could solve all the problems. Like I was not sympathetic to him at all. I'm like, you should feel guilty. I'm like, thank you game for giving me that satisfaction. And it's like, well, everyone hates us. I guess we're going to go to Ishgard, where everyone is in an isolated kingdom. So I really love that narrative of what Heavensward's about, where we're going. We're going to stay with the Ishgardians, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I mean, there's Sir Emmerich there, which, this is the first time I get to talk about him. Really cool character, beautiful voice, beautiful man. Just amazing, like locked me up in his castle. We are set up for a really good time in Heavensward. I'm emotionally invested now. I've gotten a little payoff and I'm like, okay, was it worth it? Probably not. I mean, where else would I invest 60 hours just to get that kind of a payoff? There are better ways to do that.
But now I'm in, so let's keep it going because it's only going to get better from this point. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's coming up next. Oh, there's another character I forgot about, Yugiri. So Yugiri's with us too, the ninja. We got a face reveal, which was very anticlimactic because it's just like all of a sudden she took off her mask. I'm like, is that Yugiri? And this is going to sound super rude. I don't like, being a rude person. And I have to say, I preferred Yugiri with the mask on. I don't know. I think it left more to the imagination. Like, she's a beautiful character, but just not doing it for me. Like, So, yeah, that was my impression of the end of Realm Reborn. Now, there's a few gaps to talk about as well, because the last time in my last journal, I was sharing how this game had gone excessively boring. And it's funny that is the point that I made that journal, because soon after, as soon as you get into the Dreams of Ice patch, which I think it's 2.4, the story starts picking up and it actually starts getting interesting. So you're still doing all of the primal stuff, like we fought Ramuh, and this is actually the first time I was starting to wipe a lot with my parties. And so we started doing this thing called minimum item level, which actually makes the fight a little bit more synced to what it originally was. And because of that, I think everyone just being a little rusty, maybe on the mechanics. We wiped a lot on Ramuh. We wiped like 3-4 times before we could finally get through it. But I have to say, Ramuh had absolutely beautiful music through that fight. It really reminded me of like Nier Automata. Then there was a bunch of we did Titan hard mode, which I didn't really have that much to say about that. We did get the cool like little tutorial. I love how they explain how souls work in this game. So they explain how the Asians, when they die, like instead of going back to like the flow of the earth or whatever, or to the aetherite or whatever it's called, they like go to the dark crystal and they get reborn, which basically makes all the Asians immortal. And now we have to find a solution of how do we break the cycle so we can actually kill the Asians so we can get rid of this evil from our land, which that sounds like there could be consequences of messing with that. So we eventually get introduced to this lady called Moon Brita, which I have a lot of things to say about it. Moon Brita was a very cool character who was killed off way too soon. And I know I'm skipping things here, but this was a character I could get behind. She had some good energy, she had some good presence, and I was so surprised that they chose to kill her off within this almost the same patch. She like lasted a patch or two when she took a moonbeam, because their name's Moon Brita. She took a moonshot to the chest. And sure, it was a sacrifice, and they kind of made a big deal about her death. But I didn't feel it as a player. I wasn't invested in her. I really didn't think that they built her up enough. She had so much potential. I'll be real with you guys. I felt more sadness when I found out my boy Wilred was murdered. And for those of you who have been playing 10 years, you may not even know who Wilred is. He was my boy from the Crystal Braves that I helped recruit. And he only got a few cutscenes, but like I really connected with this guy. And when I found him face down in the water, I'm like, they murdered him off screen. It was just such a bad feeling. In hindsight, though, he got murdered because he was finding out about all the traitors. So you know what? Oh, makes sense. Kind of like that. Oh, Dreams of Ice. Yeah, so we get introduced to very cool pretty boy Emmerich. Love that guy. We get introduced to another cool villain called Iceheart, who is a woman that for some reason really hates the Ishgardians, has the power to turn into Shiva, which is something we never saw happen in a Primal. And that fight was cool as well. I loved the Shiva fight. Loved the chat reacting to Shiva, because I learned about like how there's a part where she freezes everyone, so the more experienced players will all like try to pose and freeze frame, which was cool. There was a dungeon which I didn't really like that much called Snowcloak. Everybody was kind of drumming it up for me, and I was like, this is really boring music of a dungeon. Like, it was really putting me to sleep. On the way out of Snowcloak, I got a really cool experience fighting a behemoth, so I think that's like a world boss or something that's a rare spawn. So we got to fight that. I got to have that achievement, which made me feel really good. We're still getting like threads being built about a new emperor being crowned overseas. I don't know what's going on there. Another thing worth saying, and this is kind of a big deal in my journey, is I finally got a haircut. So I don't know what I was thinking with my original haircut. I was so proud of it. I used to think I was a very pretty boy, but I've cut my hair. It's short now. I look so dashing, and the chat hates it because I look like the main character from the trailers, which, you know, I'm always labeled as a vanilla streamer that always builds my character in the most vanilla way. And I'm not going to argue that, but it just looks so good. I mean, look at this boy. He looks good. And it's funny because when I looked at the Heavensward trailer, my main character looks like the guy in the trailer. I was like,
is that me in the trailer? Like, is that character supposed to embody the Warrior of Light? And people are like, yeah. I'm like, oh man, I can resonate to this so much better because that actually looks like my character in the cutscene. So, you know, it's a win-win in my books. I've also gotten some new armor, so I've changed up my look. I no longer have like the black robes and my flame sword. I switched it over to more like this future. I used poetics to get some new armor. I look like a futuristic samurai, which I really love. So loving the new look I've got. Another dungeon that came up and introduced kind of the storyline of dragons. We got the Keeper of the Lake, which I have to say is my favorite dungeon when it comes to the music. The music in this dungeon is amazing. It's just so good. Like, it has a very familiar theme playing through it, but it's kind of remixed. And then we got to meet a pretty important dragon. Like, his corpse is viewable everywhere. Midgar Somer. He took away my mommy shield, my crystal mommy shield. So I don't know why that happened. And now he's just like, I'm going to be your companion too. And now you're a pledge to me. I was like, I don't think I'm agreeing to this, but okay. I'll have a covenant with the dragon, but then I'm also going to end up fighting dragons because later on, there's an attack on Ishgard and I got to defend it, which is also another cool plot point. We got to fight like this big dragon on a bridge called Bishop, and it's like a solo duty. So you're fighting mobs, and then the dragons come in and you got like hit the dragon in different phases. I really, really liked how they handled this. Like, it's just been really getting much better. And then finally, the last thing worth mentioning is this fight with the Ascian called Nabrialis, which was okay. I kept wiping because I didn't understand the mechanic, and after a while, I just told my people, like, can you just tell me what's going on? And they're like, yeah, you gotta like touch the balls alternatively, and then you gotta like limit break at this point. I was like, okay, I don't really like that. Like, I don't think I could have figured that out on my own, which maybe it's more telling about me than the game, but it felt like a really weird gimmick. So that's where I am. I also did the Crystal Tower minimum item level. This journal is already quite long, so I'm going to put that in another journal. And now we're going into Heavensward. And oh man, if I had more time, I would probably be a Dragoon, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I might stick to Samurai because I just don't have time to grind out a new Dragoon because this pledge is tough. I'm actually not sure if I'm going to complete it in time as clock is ticking. But I'll see you all on stream in Heavensward or on the next journal. And until next time, keep it classy. So I have never raided in my life except for Raid Shadow Legend, but we're not going to talk about that because they're not sponsoring this video. We're going to talk about MMO raids and the 24-man type, the big beastie ones. So throughout my gaming life, I've heard of people doing raids and MMOs, and while I've dabbled in MMOs, it's content I just never got around to doing. I never had enough friends to make a major raid. I was never part of a guild that had enough players or coordination to do a raid, and so these things always felt out of reach, and I was really excited at the chance of finally trying a raid, but also intimidated because I heard these things were just so it required so much mass coordination, and one player messing up could ruin it for everyone, that going into Final Fantasy XIV's first raid, the Crystal Tower, felt daunting, and I wasn't sure what to expect. In fact, I almost kind of just stumbled into it until my mods took me aside, had an intervention, and they're like, listen here, Mr. Streamer Sir Hey Jay, you need to talk to us and communicate what you want to do, because we're not just gonna zippity bop a 24-man raid like that. It was the first time I had seen my community get so like serious about the content here. And so, respectfully, I told them what the plan was. We set a date, and it gave them over a week to start coordinating the community. And it took just about the entire week to fill the 24-man slot. Now, what is wild is I think in the old WoW days, there was a greater number. I don't know. This sounds crazy. I don't know if there were 64-man raids or if I'm just thinking of the Nintendo 64, where everyone was throwing the number 64 around everything. I don't know, but overall, like, not to spoil the whole journal here, but it was a good experience, and I saw other people doing the raid also enjoying themselves in ways that they never really got the chance to, because what we did is we did a minimum item level raid, which means we experienced the raid at its intended difficulty as much as possible. This is a 10-year-old raid. From what I understand, it's really hard to recreate the original experience, but we did the best we could with what we had. And it took us 4 hours. It was a whole stream night. What I liked about this was not only that there was the team-based aspect of it, but this was some of the best, like, concise storytelling in Final Fantasy XIV up to this point. Remember, I've only done a Realm Reborn. I hadn't seen the end of a Realm Reborn yet. So Crystal Tower was the biggest chunk of story that just kept flowing
in story beats that was actually also interesting. What is this big crystal tower doing out here? Why should we care about it? Why is it so mysterious? The more we unveiled about it, like the more richness the story had. It pretty much had me hooked the moment that I saw, what is this massive crystal? Oh, it's got a defense mechanism. Okay, let's go unlock that. And as I learned that this was like a multi-stage raid, which I don't know if that's how they all are usually, that too I found was really interesting. It's just kind of really fleshes out and pads out the content. I think that this was delivered in patches, so if I would have done this at launch, to my understanding, there would have been months between the different parts, but I did it all back to back, which some parts didn't flow as well, where they're like, oh, that was a fun part, let's recollect after we gathered some data, and then like it goes quest complete, and then the quest is available, the next quest is available right away, and he's like, oh, well, I guess we're ready now. It's like, you literally took 2 breaths, but okay. The Crystal Tower had 3 parts. We got the Labyrinth of the Ancients, Circus Tower, or Circus Tower, however you want to say it, and then the World of Darkness. All very cool parts to it. We got introduced to our main character for this quest series called Grahatia, our Mikote Extraordinaire. So let's talk about the raid. We have our 24 players divided into 3 teams. My 3 generals, we got Blue, we got Takashi, we got Yumel. Each of them are leading 8-man teams. I'm in Team Blue. We were on voice chat, the 4 of us. And so everybody on stream and the other teams could listen to their commanders through the stream, which wasn't optimal because there was a little bit of lag that way. But somehow it worked out. And it was such a focused experience where, you know, at first we were goofing off. And in fact, I was worried that this was just going to be a messy, chaotic stream. Like, I'm always hesitant to bring people on stream because it's one thing to watch someone talking on stream. It's another thing when you can't see all these other people and all you're hearing are voices. That's my take on it. I just prefer not a crowded space on streams. But the mods knew what they had to do. They knew that they had to, you know, not goof off too much while they were on stream. And it was so tactical. It's like, all right, we're going to go here. We're going to do this. And then I was like, all right, I see that. Okay, hitting number 3 now. And the communication was just so like, it was such a good team building exercise. And I say this as someone who never really like did many like team camps, leadership camps, things like that. So I don't think I got to experience this where a lot of other people probably do get to experience this. Like, I'm assuming if you go in the military, this is probably like military drills 101. You got to communicate with your squad. So that was cool. And even so this is funny. As soon as we get in, we get the rundown, we go into the dungeon, and it's like, okay, this is going to be a trash mob. We're going to go in, we're going to attack, and we're all like pumped. We're like, yeah, let's do this. We've been waiting for a week. First trash mob, let's go and wipe. So it was a very humbling experience. And what happened, from what I understand, is there wasn't coordination yet between the tanks. The tanks didn't aggro equally. So we came back humbled. We're like, all right. Now we started putting numbers, or the commanders, as I will call them, started putting numbers and letters on the scene before we entered the fight, which was really good organization on their part. So they're like, all right, tank A, you go aggro that. Tank B, you aggro that. Tank C, we're aggroing this. And it was clean. It was good. We got through the first trash mob. Congratulations, everyone. Next up, we had the Bone Dragon, which this thing was, all of the bosses in these raids all had an interesting mechanic. So at first I was like, oh, let me figure it out, and then we'll probably wipe, and then we'll go back. We did that a few, like on these first few bosses, and I was like, oh man, I've got 4 hours to get through Crystal Tower. We don't have the time for me to make mistakes, and I am not learning fast enough. I'm kind of too thick and dumb. So I decided, you know what, just tell me what the strategy is, tell me what we got to do. And honestly, it was a way more pleasant experience than just going in like, what's the boss gonna do? And even when the strategy was explained, executing it wasn't always that easy. We still wiped a lot of times. So with the Bone Dragon, for example, I learned that like you kill the dragon, and then I think there's like all these bone skeletons that you have to kill on their own platforms, because if you kill them on the same platform, they damage everything. And if you don't kill them properly, they all run back to the center onto the Bone Dragon, of which everybody dies from mass explosion. So there has to be a coordinated effort of you kill the dragon, you kill all the skeletons on their own platforms all around, and everything has to be done in a synchronized way for this to work. So that was also quite difficult. Then we went into some room with some praying worms. This one was not too noticeable. Like, it was a lot easier than everything else. You just smack the worms. Although we did wipe on this as well, because the tanks weren't aggroing the right thing. We switched the strategy, and it was all right after that. It was just a matter of controlling the aggro, smacking the worms. And then we made it forward to a creature called Visago, there was 3 of them, and they would fight, and then they would rotate, and we just had to like keep on our dudes, from what I remember. Cool design, Also, this was more manageable. We moved forward to probably one of the most iconic boss fights in Final Fantasy XIV. We had King Behemoth. This also reminded me very much of my experience fighting Behemoth in Monster Hunter World. This one too took a while. So I was stationed at a tower. My responsibility was when the when the tower was glowy red, I had to smack it and keep it not glowy red. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was just hitting King Behemoth. And every now and then when he would summon meteor or anything, I had to go like hide behind some rocks. So there was a lot of things to pay attention to, and like, oh, the tower's going off. Oh, Behemoth's going. Oh, I gotta go behind the rock. And all of that just created like a good sense of fun. Like there was some tension, there was some pressure, there was a lot of things to look after. That was probably one of my favorite fights in the Labyrinth of Ancients, maybe even the whole raid, just because it required so much coordination. It was the first time I really felt like I had to zoom out my camera. People say I play with my camera too zoomed in, which probably. King Behemoth fight is the fight that like made me understand, oh, I really need to be zoomed out because I got to see the tower, I got to see what King Behemoth's doing, and I got to see what these other spawns are doing. So that was a really cool fight. And then we made it to the final dude, which is Phlegathon. So I did find out before recording this that apparently the design of Phlegathon is the Titan from Final Fantasy III, which is a Final Fantasy I actually did not play. And from what I understand, the whole Crystal Tower raid is, I think, a big reference to Final Fantasy III. Again, I don't understand any of this, but I thought it was just cool, and I wish I did play Final Fantasy III so I could understand the references and the callbacks. But Phlegathon was a cool design, but the fight itself didn't leave really anything leave any impression on me. So with the whole labyrinth cleared, we finally make it to the base of Circus Tower. We can't get in because it's sealed, but then lo and behold, we've got our keys, Doga and Unai, who come in with a very like weird vibe to them. They're kind of creepy. They're not like moving too good. They got these red eyes, so they're probably from like the I don't even know how to say that out loud. Anyways, I tried to make a Naruto joke, but I just ruined it. So yeah, they got red eyes. Clear, I guess that Alligans had red eyes. We learned very quickly that these are clones from like 5,000 years ago. And then they open the door because they have the blood of royalty in them. Now, at this point, we already know Graha T has a red eye, and he's like, am I royalty? And it's like, this is the lamest kind of like tease. It's like, obviously you have something to do with the Alligans, Mr. Red Eye, Mr. Character who got introduced just for this story arc. Anyway, so we go to Circus Tower. This is where we get a lot more plot. We learn more about the tower, about the Emperor. The Emperor, I'm going to bastardize his name. I think his name is, it's either Zandi or Shandi. I think you pronounce the X sh, so I'm going to say Shandi, who was like the best emperor that made the Alligans prosperous, but then he died as mortal people do, and the kingdom was pretty much going to ruins. So one dude, Anon, he's like, hey, what if we cloned our original emperor, brought him back so he can rule us properly again? Everyone's like, yeah, let's do that. And then they brought him back, but he's a clone who's a little defective, gets a little power hungry. He's like, you know what? I don't like being alive. I don't like all this rule. Let's wipe it all out. And so he decides to make like a deal with the Shadow Realm and destroy the world. That's I don't think that went quite to plan. So now we got to go smack this clone emperor who's been sleeping in a crystal tower for who knows how long. I'm saying this like but honestly, cool plot. Like this is right up my alley. I'm enjoying this. So anyways, let's go. We go into a circus tower. We got some mobs, clear the mobs. We got a boss called Scylla, which was really cool because she had ice balls, fireballs, thunderballs, and each one had to do something. So like if you had a fireball, you got to melt your friend who was an ice. If you had an ice ball, you got to cool off your fire dude. And if you have a lightning thing, you have to ground yourself by going to like the lightning pillar. That fight, I really enjoyed what you had to do. Then there was like this big boy Glacia Lobulas, just interesting name. Again, I like these big chunky bosses from a design perspective, but from a fight perspective, at this point we're starting to clean out the fights a lot like faster and easier, especially compared to the Labyrinth of Ancients. So it was just kind of just more like, oh, that's a cool design. All right, let's melt them. Then we got into the more iconic bosses, which was Anon, I basically call him the undead bard. Like he's got a lot of flair to his outfit. Props to him. He also is surrounded by, I mean, I have to say it because the chat was laughing about it, but we had this enemy called the Cum Cum, spelt with a K, and I'm just like, what? And they're like, attack the Cum Cum. I'm like, you want me to do what now? So we killed that, and then there was Shandi, and he also was not like that crazy hard of a boss or anything. He was just a big chunky boy with some big special attacks. The tank kept him busy, and as a DPS, I was just smacking away on the back, and then when he notices me, I like go like, run away. And then I was like, well, where do we go from Circus Tower now that it's over? So we see that at the top there is a rift to the Shadow Realm, and we learned that that's where we got to go to like end this for good, because Shandy was trying to open the Shadow Realm to unleash all the Shadow Beasts and destroy the world. Off we go, a little bit of story exposition, come back. There's a whole guy I'm not mentioning here because he was boring as heck. Basically, like this whole squad that we have come together with this G'raha Tia, we're called NOAA, which is an acronym for something I didn't write because it wasn't important. And there was this other guy who never came with us, but he kept giving us orders, and I forget his name. It's something, I think it's like something bro. He talked so much and provided no value in his words and talking. He's the guy that you go back to base to get the story moving forward all the time. And I really did not like talking to that guy. He just went on forever. It's like, why are you here? You're doing nothing. You're slowing us down. Please stop talking. So then we got the World of Darkness. This one really felt like kind of attack on stage 3 of just like, yeah, you're in the Dark World. This felt very endgame Final Fantasy and just like Trash Mob. Remember that boss? They're back as Trash Mob. Just kill everything. The only really interesting things of note here was Cerberus. That was an interesting fight because I think he like eats everybody at the end, which was interesting. And the Cloud of Darkness, which was a pretty iconic boss. But what I liked and what I forgot to mention through this whole thing is Nero. Nero was probably like my trump card to all of this. I'm a sucker for villain redemption arcs, and Nero is not redeemed yet, but he is showing signs that he could be a villain that goes on the redemption arc, which is my jam. So I had no idea that mystery man that I met in Mordona was Nero. So at first we got that reveal, I think at the end of the Labyrinth of the Ancients. And then he like takes it off and he looks so cool without his armor. I'm like, oh man, Nero, you should have never worn that armor. You look way better as a casual dude. And he's all like power hungry. He's like, I'm going to get the power of this crystal. And it's like, oh yeah, that's right. You're a good villain. But then at the end, he like, when we're all going into the World of Darkness, it's because the clones got sucked in there. And Nero, like, I know he kind of selfishly wanted like the power, so that's why he's going in there. But through that, it seems like he realized, you know, it's not all about the power. And he almost like crystallized, and Sid saved him. He's like, I'm not going to accept this saviorness. And so I just loved how they like showed Nero. I love that he's going a little bit more neutral at this point. Still not like goody two-shoe, but he's not like crazy evil villain. Now he's just kind of neutral, and I'm down for that. So yeah, Nero is one of my best parts of that. After the whole thing was done, we lost the Doga and Unai sacrificed themselves, gave their blood to G'raha Tia so that he could control Circus Tower, and G'raha Tia decided to sacrifice himself by being the guardian of the tower, staying behind so he could seal it off and never seeing anyone again. Now, will we see this in the future? I've been told that I think this plot point does come back later, which I wish I had not seen that on the internet. When I was trying to compile my notes, I just saw a mention of something comes back. So overall, just really like interesting story, interesting characters, interesting mechanic. Doing this with so many people, like it's a really cool shared experience. So raids is not like something it'd be too stressful, I think, to do like every week. But once in a while, just to do this with like the community and just share this memory together and like have a good time and like just not fail all the time. Failing sometimes is okay, but if we would have failed all the time and not made any progress, I would not be smiling as much on this journal. So that was my first experience as in a raid. I think it was a pretty solid one to start with. Oh, before I forget, I wanted to thank everyone. In fact, Blue told me, hey, don't you forget to thank everybody who made this possible for you. So let me just pull up real quick here. There's a lot of names I'm going to say here. I am probably going to bastardize a lot of these, but they definitely deserve to be called out. So thank you, everyone. Starting off with Team A, we've got Saro Vincenzo, Takashi Eventide, Bracken Wormfire, Velvet Odin, Izayoi Inaba, Hound Hellbane, Melanie Mellon, Cookton Hulls. Thank you all for making Team A. Team C, thank you to Autumn Falls, Tatiana Klaus, Duncan Jinkori Riad. What is this last name? Drakander Dulakarnian. Oh my goodness. Takina da Silim Dala. I'm so sorry. Marina Blossomfire, UML Tia, Amber Ling, and finally Team B, which was my team that I was a part of. Thank you again. Leslie Bluewater, Lula Ket, Faye Vandam, Madia Eclipsal, Kai Icho, Chi Ramenthal, Claire Firelord, and then, of course, I wasn't. I'm not going to thank myself. Once again, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the photos that Blue took of our raid group that night.
And thanks to all of you for being an amazing community. I'll see you on the next journal. The next thing I will be sharing is, of course, my entry into Heavensward, but also we're going to be talking about Coils, whatever that is. I think it's a dungeon or a duty. It's apparently like really hard optional content. So something Coils, I'll be talking about that in a journal or two from now. I'll see you then or on stream. And until next time, keep it classy. This right here is when Final Fantasy XIV starts getting good. Not quite at the beginning of Heavensward, but about 8 hours in, ooh, we are getting into some good stuff. Welcome back, classy crew. We are done with the Realm Reborn. I almost knocked that mug off my desk. We are almost done a Realm Reborn. I still have to do some Coils thing. That's coming up. But for now, I am in full-blown Heavensward mode. We are finally starting this pledge proper, and I have about 6 weeks to figure out how I'm going to finish this game, streaming it like 12 hours a week. I have to get to the end of Heavensward in that time to finish my pledge. But anyways, that aside, I am very excited because I'm finally getting into like a thread of story I am invested in. I'm going to be fully honest with you guys. When I started Heavensward, I was coming off of the Realm Reborn ending, which just makes you feel infuriated and you're like, I need vengeance. And then the trailer to Heavensward, as soon as it starts, you hear like this singing, this opera singing. And I'm going to tell you right now, to me, it sounded like screeching in my ear. It hurt my ear. It was really painful to listen. And everybody said I was rude, but look, I'm just telling you what I'm feeling here. The more I've been listening to it, the like, I think more in tune I'm able to listen to. It's not as bad, but the trailer gets good anyways after the sad part when like the dragons show up and the music's like hidden with some drums and there's some chanting. It's like dun, 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 and it's all about like the hero finding his courage again. And so that got me pumped. The whole emotion of like, I need vengeance. And the trailer just shoves so many spoilers in there, but like it's hitting on all the beats that a Realm Reborn ended on. It's like, remember the poison? Remember your friend who lost his arm? Remember this little Lalafell? And it's just like, oh, I feel it. And then the music's coming and then you're turning into a dragoon. And it's just like, and this is going to suck to say out loud because I know what you're going to think. I saw that, I'm like, I should be a dragoon. And you're probably all saying, yes, but my pledge prevents me from doing that. And this is where you're all saying your pledge sucks, forget about it, enjoy the game. And I'm like, yes, but the pledge holds sway over me. Because yes, if I was probably playing this more relaxed, I would probably invest some time into Dragoon, which I know it's really like unfortunate and sad to hear. I just can't afford to do that right now because I'm trying to get to a certain amount of content by a certain deadline. And there's a reason behind that. It's not just me saying I'm pledging for the sake of pledging. It's because as a content creator, I actually want to start Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate in July. Like that's ultimately the pledge. It's two birds, one stone kind of thing. But that said, I'm still very much enjoying Samurai. It's just flavor-wise, I feel like the game is begging you to be a Dragoon at this part. The part that I really love, and I want to get this out of the way right away, is specifically after the whole introduction into Heavensward, when you start getting to the point that you are traveling with Alphino, Estinian, and Eorzea. That's exactly the content I did before recording this. And you're venturing in the Chocobo Forest and you're trying to seek out like the Elder Dragon, God, whatever. That I love so much. And I don't know if I should be talking about it now or if I should like get the boring stuff out of the way. I got introduced to like new voice actors, which I was expecting a bigger change in like Alphino's voice. I get what people say though. He is less annoying. I can't put my finger on what it is about the new voice actor, but they did make Alphino more bearable. Tataru got her voice changed too. I'm not sure I feel more one way or another. The new Quest Complete song has changed. Now we get like this like organ. It sounds like I'm in church. Honestly, a lot of people seem to love it. I preferred the Realm Reborn one than this one. Sorry guys. And then we get into Ishgard. So this was actually quite interesting. Where are you going? Ishgard is interesting because when I visited all of the other towns, when I got introduced into Final Fantasy XIV, they showed me around town. They helped me unlock the Ethernet ports so that I could travel more easily. Here in Ishgard, I was on my own. My community didn't help me. And I was like, oh, I don't know my way around this town. Oh, I can't teleport anywhere. And so I actually went out of the way and I found all of these Ethernet ports and I got familiar with the town. And there's that sense of discovery. And I do feel, and I don't know if it's because Realm Reborn has been like chopped up so much, I felt way more a sense of exploration and discovery in Heavensward, just because the game, I could see what it's doing. Even narratively, they're like, let's go explore Ishgard. I'm like, yes, I don't know this city.
Please, I need to know where everything is. Then you get taken into Count Edward's home. By the way, fantastic narrator. We now have the companion of a narrator that joins us everywhere we go, exclaiming how we're coming everywhere. And then we get introduced to his children, which I assume are going to become characters that have importance. And they introduce 2 areas as well as 2 plot threads that they're okay. Honestly, they're like Realm Reborn level okay, like slightly better, but still it was kind of boring. So we have Emmanuelin, who's like really annoying kid, and that whole plot line, like we got to discover the Sky Islands, which is cool. And overall, I got to meet, like, there was this Vanu. It was a lot of fetch questing, which is why I think I'm saying it was boring, but there was a lot of new things to discover, which is why I'm like, okay, it's not that bad. And then all of this led to the plot point of, oh, in the sky there's a primal whale, and you know, I kill primals for a living, so I'm gonna go have to fight a whale. And then the other story beat with Artoirel, the older brother, it's all about the heretics, and I'm so tired of the heretics. Like, we've done this in patch 2.3 or 2.4 where we just dug into this already, and it just felt like a rehash. But I understand it was cementing the whole dynamic of the heretics with the Ishgardians, because it is a pretty heavy plot point as I'm seeing developed, but it was just boring to run through the snow. Oh, and what made it worse is I no longer have my flying mount, so I can't just go boop, 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 boop to do everything. I actually have to run now, and my mount is at 1.0 speed, so it's slow to run with. I can't fly, and the lands are bigger, I think. Like, it takes longer to get from point A to point B, so all of that just felt like, oh, this is so monotonous. But then I got introduced to a mechanic I absolutely love. It's called the Ether Currents. It's a new mechanic that they're like, hey, you want to fly again? Finish all of these quests, find all these ether currents, you can fly in this region. I'm like, see what you're doing. And I like it. I like that they reward the player for doing this exploration. And I'm actually picking up blue quests and doing all these side quests because I want to fly. So once we get those plot points, then Alphino and Tataru get in trouble. Long story short, we meet the Archbishop. We find out he's with the Asians, but he's not like really with the Asians. He thinks he's using the Asians, but like he also kind of looks kind of evil. Alphino got some new swag, some new drip, which is good. And then they're like, hey, remember Roban? He's going to get killed. We should probably go save him. I'm like, okay, we're done the intro of Heavensward. We know the new land. That's right. Let's go address all that garbage that just happened at a Realm Reborn. Let's do this. So that was starting to like pull me back in. So we saved Raban, and then it sounds like the Sultana might not be actually dead, but that there's a grander plot, and they just wanted you to think she's dead. And I'm like, oh, why are you doing this? Don't take it back. That was such a good like plot device. Now you're gonna take it away from us? So they took it away too fast. It's like, yeah, the Sultana's not really dead. She's just in a deep sleep because we only lowered her poison. I'm like, oh, come on. I mean, it's adding levels of nuances to what's really going on with these traders, but I'm like, can't you just let me like hang on to this hate and want to destroy things? So that was unfortunate. Then the Dravanian horde is attacking Ishgard again. I'm like, okay, here we go again. But now we get introduced to Estinian, which is the Azure Dragoon, which has an amazing personality of just being kind of like this elite commander who just wants to kill dragons. And he's very like, that's all he knows what to do. He's like, dragons, I kill them. Just give me a dragon. We go, and Alphino, I think, cooks up a plan of like, hey, why don't we just go talk to the heretics who can maybe we can like negotiate a peace with the dragons or something. And it's like, okay, well, we got to talk to the Shiva lady, who we learned later on her name is Isael. And all of that setup was like, I didn't quite understand, but when we started questing together, the dynamic of that party is so good. I'm like, oh, you could make a movie out of this specific plot point of like macho heroic captain of the guard with traitorous lady who's a rebel that hates the commander, me who's like, and Alphino, this little boy who's trying to find his place in the world after everything he believed in got shattered around him. And we're all going into foreign lands where nobody is safe, so we can't hate each other. And we're gonna go make peace with the dragons. And the music of this land, like in the Chocobo Forest, is just like, oh, it's so good. It feels like prime classic fantasy adventure, and I am here for this. And also the story here is getting interesting too. So I got to learn the story of Shiva and the like how Shiva came to be. So Saint Shiva was a human. I'm sorry, I don't know the proper terms. A human. The humans like invaded the dragon land, so the dragons didn't like it, and of course, so they fought And then the lady Shiva became a soulmate with, like, I don't know his name because it's really hard to pronounce. Even if I wrote it, I couldn't pronounce it. He fell in love with the Shiva. They're like soulmates. And then he's like, but you're gonna die because you're immortal, but I really love you. And the idea they came up with was like, what if I eat you? Sounds like a trap, Shiva, but apparently if a dragon eats you, you don't die. You get immortality. I smell a plot hole right there. So anyways, that's how we got the peace between the dragons and the people that lasted for like 200-300 years until the stupid humans are like, man, we want to be immortal like dragons. I bet you if we steal their eye, we can do that. And so they went and stole the eye and angered the dragons for thousands of years. And speaking of eyes, Estinian happens to carry the eye that was stolen from the dragons, specifically Nidog, the dragon called Nidog. So all of this story building is really interesting. I'm really into it. And so it's just like, what's going to happen? Like, everybody hates Estinian because he's got the eye, and they're not even targeting him, he was saying. Like, they just want to destroy every, like, Ishgardian, every human. They just really hate humans. So what he's going to do, he's going to be like, here's your eye again, or like, let's have peace. Like, what's up? I don't know where this story's going to go, but I'm here for it because I can't predict it. And we've got a good group of camaraderie. Oh, and also another reason that this is the better part of the game, we got introduced to the coolest freaking Primal ever, Ravana, which looks like a awesome, like, Power Ranger, I don't even know, like a Power Ranger Samurai or something. He's got the coolest armor, cool voice, cool character, and he's not got one cool song, he's got 2 cool songs. My mind could not contain. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Oh, this is cool. Oh, this is cool. And as I'm fighting, I'm like, they put an even cooler song to make, like, it's like a 7-layer cake of coolness, this character. And he's even honorable. Like, you beat him and he even honors, like, the fact that he lost, and he does. So, man, Ravana is awesome. And from what I understand, this is like a Primal that is unique to FF14. He doesn't show up in any other Final Fantasy game. Just so cool. Man, love it. Sorry, I'm just gushing at this point. But yeah, Heavensward now, we're getting to good stuff. I really hope they don't take the foot off the gas, because if this is what I was promised, the content I was promised for, I'm here for it. I mean, I dug to get here, and I'm ready to eat good, so let's keep it up. I'll update you on the next journal as to where I am, or you can join me on stream over at twitch.tv/KGOfficial. Maybe I'll see you there. Otherwise, or either way, until next time, keep it classy. All right, I think I have the full plot of Heavensward, and this game is so good that when we went back to our vengeance plot of A Realm Reborn, it seems so boring in comparison. Welcome back, Classic Crew, to another update on Heavensward and my journey to complete it in the next now 4 weeks. I got to finish this before June 30th, which is my pledge. If I fail, the community gets to choose which weapon I use in low rank in my next journey, which is through Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate. Now, I've made quite a bit of headway in Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward since I was away for a week, so I was doing some weekend streaming to catch up, and I've made it now to level 60. I think I'm getting close to the end because everything seems to be coming to an inflection point. And it's good. There's a lot of good stuff. And last time I was sharing how I was really enjoying the journey of our 3 main characters, well, 4 main characters, including ourselves, with Alphino, the Shiva lady, and Estinian, all about trying to create peace between the dragons and the Ishgardians. And man, we have now uncovered so many layers of plot points and deceitness on both sides. It's really unraveling very much like a Game of Thrones story, which, to my understanding, this game was developed around the same time Game of Thrones was really hot and popular. So I wouldn't be surprised if that, the Song of Ice and Fire, influenced Heavensward to some degree. So let's get started. Just to let you know, this journal is going to end at the point where we go to the sky. So I have slayed some dragons. I have reclaimed some eyeballs, reawoken a princess that should have been dead, honestly. And I'm in the sky looking for a key. Actually, I found the key, and we're finding out that all of this is probably heading to a forbidden sky city called Azisla, which is, again, thanks to the frickin' Alligans who are messing up the world with their ancient technology. So let's break it down. Last time I was about to go into the dungeon called Som Al, which was kind of a sanctuary for the dragons, and there we would fight Tiamin, which is one of the, like, sister dragons, from what I understand, to the main dragons, which I really am not good with names. If you guys have been here for a while, you know that. And I cannot for the life of me pronounce the main dragon's name that starts with an H. It's like H with so many letters that should not be together. So we're just going to call him Big H for the sake of my sanity. And his brother, which I've also been laughed at for not being able to pronounce his name. I think it's Knee-Dog or something. We're just going to call him N-Dog. Besides, he's got eye problems, so let's just take the eye away from his name because we're taking it away from his skull too. With that, I also got to say, the song of this expansion, which is not the one, the trailer, but the one called Dragon Song, which my community's like, here's your Heavensward song, hey Jay. This is the new song to your answer, because I really like answers from a Realm Reborn. I was like, I don't like this. But now that I've sucked on the story a little bit more, tasted it, and heard that little like tone and that little melody weaved in and out of all these key moments, I have to say I like Dragon Song. I like the melody of Dragon Song. I'm like, oh, maybe now it's the moment that it clicks for me. And so I went back to listen to the original song that my community sent me with the lyrics, and the start, the I'm like, okay, I like that. And then they start singing, like it's fine, but like the end part where like they're really bringing up the vocals and singing really loudly, I don't like that part yet. So it's like 50% grown on to me. I like the melody, I like the instrumental version, the lyric part. I gotta like spend more time with the lyrics to listen to them and really like let the lyrics hit me. And at that point, I might actually enjoy the song more. So yeah, what's it called? Som All. We slayed human. N-Dog is not happy. We are now in the land of the dragons, and we have found a new heaven of Muggles in the Churning Mists, where we met some Muggles, and we're like, what the heck? Muggles live here? We should go back and talk to our other Muggles in the forest and being like, yo, can you guys help us see these Muggles? So we go back there, we're like, hey, there's Muggles in the mountain. They're like, holy, what? So we bring them and they're like, oh, lost cousins. This all ties to like, you know, the origins or the backstory of Muggles coming from like the sky. They're like, oh, we're all descendants of these mountain Muggles. So then all the Muggles get along. We meet Moglin, who introduces us to all these other little Mog fellows. We do all of their bidding in true Moogle fashion so that they respect us, and then they pretty much agree to help us on our way to find Big H. We get to Big H and we're like, Big H, this is enough bloodshedding. We've fought for 1,000 years, and so we're like, you know, let's make peace. And then, whoop, plot twist, Big H is like, you're not Shiva, you're just a fake god. You think you're Shiva, but you just willed it. So we're like, her whole world just got wrecked all around her. And then the big plot twist at this point was basically it's all the humans' fault. And turns out, I think this is the part where we find out all of the Ishgardians are cursed with the dragon's power, so that if they drink dragon's blood, they all turn into like a draconian or dravonia. I don't know what they're called. So this whole time, our band of merry fellows thought we had heretics that were casting spells to turn into dragons, but it turns out any Ishgardian that drinks the blood of dragons turns into like a humanoid dragon thing. So that's a big plot twist, because it's like, whoa, there's not as many differences as we thought there were between the Ishgardians, and it only gets worse. So at this point, Big H is like, you know what, you guys, like, humans are pretty bad, you're always doing bad things, and you guys started this whole thing, so screw you, no peace, goodbye. And he's like, take it up with N-Dog, and let's see what he says. So we're like, all right, I guess the only way to stop N-Dog from burning everybody and attacking us over the last 1,000 years is let's go kill N-Dog. And Estinian's like, yes, this is what I live for. I'm a dragoon, let's go. So we go to the Eyrie to slay N-Dog. The Eyrie was a pretty cool dungeon. I enjoyed it. I liked the N-Dog fight too. He was actually mechanically challenging. Like we got on the first try, but I have to say, he kept me on my toes. So we kill him, we take away his eye, and I think he slayed properly. And then we get a flashback as another one of our crystals awaken, which, what is up with my crystals reawakening and why were they sealed away? This whole plot line about my inner crystals, I don't get it yet. So, okay, yeah, we get a flashback and we learn that N-Dog was actually defeated 1,000 years ago by the king and his 12 knights. And he stole both eyes. And I was like, that's the moment when he came out with 2 eyes. Like, aha, we defeated N-Dog. Why do you have 2 eyes when Estinian only has 1 eye? Where's the other eye? And so now there's this whole mystery about who's got whose eye, and how did N-Dog have an eye when I just killed him, and why was that eye yellow and not red? So we found out that the old king of Ishgard didn't slay N-Dog for whatever reason. So N-Dog ran back to his brother Big H, asked for an eye. Big H was like, sure, here's an eye. So he split his power, revived N-Dog, which unleashed 1,000 years of pain on the Ishgardians. And then we know that the Azure Dragoon inherited the eye, generation after generation, and there's an eye missing that I still don't know what's going on. That's why it was kind of like I couldn't stop streaming. I kept playing because I'm like, what happened to the other eye? I'm so curious to find out. And then we understood that was what ended the lineage the Ishgardian kings, because what was his name? Haldrath. He was like, I'm gonna like die fighting dragons. I'm not gonna keep leading. You guys figure it out. And out of the 8 knights that remained, 4 were like, well, we could do like, high classes and have houses. I don't know if I wrote those names. And then basically this reveals that not only are the heretics and the like Ishgardians the same, but now we're also finding out the class system is completely BS. That the nobles from the houses are the same kind of like nobility as the people in the slums. Basically, the people in the slums are the descendant of the 4 other knights that said, we don't want to have high houses. We're just going to live our way. So the entire Ishgardian hierarchy and social construct is all based on a lie. And now that we've killed the dragon, which has unified our hate towards the dragons, now we got to deal with all this internal garbage with the Holy See. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry. It's just that plot. This whole plot is really interesting, and I'm enjoying digging into it. I skipped so much stuff. Before we even got to the Eyrie, we can't access it because, lo and behold, there's another barrier. And this is going to become like a reoccurring joke, I guess, in this game. Everywhere we want to go has a barrier. So we can't get through the barrier. We go see our boy Sid, who's our barrier buster at this point. We're like, Sid, how do we get through this one? Can we use the Enterprise? He's like, no, we'll be sitting ducks. But how about I build you a slicker ship called the Mana Cutter? And this thing is like basically my own personal like R-Wing, which is pretty cool. If the editor doesn't know what I mean by an R-Wing, look up Star Fox. That's what I'm talking about. The Mana Cutter needs time, which is a perfect segue to let's go back to Ul'dah, which I was like, oh my God, I'm so invested right now. Why are we going back to Ul'dah? This is such an old like world, an old story. I completely forgot about it. Scions of the Seventh Dawn, who are they? I don't even care anymore. But anyway, apparently what's her name? Nanamo is not dead. Apparently she's just been sleeping. And so we got to interview all these people. We get to see Raban back with a really cool cape. And he's got like this like really cool like boar or whatever thing that whatever represents him on his shoulder. Like he just looks cool. He looks healthy. He's been eating. He's ready for his vengeance. We get a tip that, the Sultana is probably alive. She's just been poisoned with like deep sleep stuff, and we have to find an antidote. So we start like interviewing people. We find the antidote, and they're like, okay, go wake her up. So I go wake her up, and everything's back to normal. We kind of somewhat made peace with the Lalafell, whatever his name is, the one that I thought was evil, but now he's like so evil that he's been able to manipulate me to realize I have to work with him. That is like next level evil. This is something I think I said last journal when they were hinting at it, and now that it's confirmed and we've seen the Sultana come back, I feel like it's such a, I don't know why they couldn't commit to her dying. I felt it was such a powerful plot device. I felt it really like drove the player and changed the world. And basically for them to go back and say, oh, just joking, just like, let's take all that hate you had for that Lalafell, let's undo it. Let's undo the Sultana dying. I'm just like, why? Like, I get it. Okay, you got a good thing going here in Ishgard, but like, you don't have to like undo all the good stuff you did in Ul'dah here. So we're basically back to square one in Ul'dah, where they're like, well, I guess we're back together now. We can't get rid of the monarchy. That'd be dumb. So let's keep it under wraps as we are now as a council. And let's start focusing on the Empire, because we like fighting the Empire. I'm just like, this is not satisfying. Why did we do this? So, and then with that, we kind of go and tie up another plot thread with the Crystal Braves, where Alphinaud needs to kind of finish. He's like, all right, let's just finish it. And then like the remaining Crystal Braves are like, no, we will always be like loyal to you, and we are like the ones that really believe in this. And he's like, oh, cry. I'm assuming this is all going to come back, but I feel Realm Reborn was built up at the end to like do something amazing, and I feel we went on this whole other tangent that was way more interesting, and they just didn't commit to the possibilities that they set up with Realm Reborn. But I could be getting ahead of myself. We'll see what happens. After that, I realized that I was actually high enough level to continue my samurai quest line. So back to my master Musosai, who gave me a bunch of small minor quests, which I was quite surprised at how like not impactful they are narratively. They're very character development, where we basically go to the first 3 main towns, starting in Ul'dah, where we have to deal with like prostitution and dealing with a guy who's like a criminal who's basically enslaving women and prostituting them. And then we go to Limsa to deal with a murderer, which this had a little bit of a fun bit because there was a duty that was quite hard on a boat, and we got to see like
basically a Lalafell weeb who really loves samurais and is like collecting swords and all this stuff. And then we go to Gridania to deal with a thief. I feel like we're going through basically all of like the major kind of crimes that exist. And then eventually that took us back to Ishgard. So it kind of naturally brought me back to where the main story quest wanted me to go by doing my side quest. So now I'm at the part where I think I'm at level 58 samurai quest. After this, I spent almost 2 hours cleaning up my inventory. This is something that has plagued me from the start. It's plagued me in other games. Monster Hunter took me so long to get comfortable with inventory management. I had to dedicate a stream just to learn menus and stuff like that. And I was very hesitant to do this for this game, but it just kind of naturally happened where I kept seeing my like inventory filling up in the bottom right. I was like, oh, I really got to deal with this. And then I was just in the zone. I was like, all right, explain it to me. What do I do? And they're like, go back to your inn, go through everything you want to keep from like a visual perspective, put that in your glamour dresser, and sell everything else. And so I spent 2 hours going over all my katanas, all my hats, all my chess pieces. I'm like, I like this, I like this, I like this. I could probably use this. And then I sold everything else. I went through all my items. I'm like, do I need this? They're like, yeah. So that took me a good time to clean it all. Unfortunately, the sins of my past still plague me because a couple weeks ago, I didn't want to do this. I didn't know what to do it. So I just dumped everything in my retainer and maxed them out. And that 2 hours I just mentioned did not include cleaning up my retainer's pockets. It was just cleaning up my pocket. So I still got to go back, empty out my retainer's pockets, clean all that up, and then I'm going to be in a properly managed inventory state, which is rough. Now we're back to the Ishgardian questline where we learn about the lies of everything. So now Endog's dead. Big H has his eye again. He's like, screw you humans. I hate dealing with you guys. And he just leaves. And we learn Sir Emmerich, our boy, is the son or the bastard son of the Pope, who's kind of evil because he's like aligned with the Ascians. Remember those guys, the cloaked figures? And yeah, we get introduced to another character, which I absolutely love, called Hilda, who's like a half-breed between, I don't know the names properly, but a human and an elf, basically. And I feel this character, like if we're going to start some waifu wars here today, Hilda, way more, I mean, it doesn't matter its looks, but we're going to talk about her looks anyways. Way more attractive than, oh my goodness, I forget her name, but the ninja Aura. And that's an improvement because I don't call them dragon people anymore. Was, you know, some people fancied her. And I was like, she was better with the mask on. But I'm saying Hilda I'm in agreement with. And everyone's like, yeah, Hilda's good. So we're in agreement with Hilda being a good waifu. That plot led us to the vault, which is a very climactic dungeon because there's some big things that happen here. So we discover that the Temple Knights have this power to grow, which is like, what the heck is this? How are they doing this? Do they have some kind of like secret? So I think this is tied to that missing eye. I think the Holy See is holding on to the missing eye, or some group out there has the missing eye of Endog. And then the whole thing ends, of course, with the Pope escaping and the Temple Knights. And I really didn't see this one coming, but they killed off our boy, Hochstafan. I don't know why they would kill him. I was still building up like my relationship with him. I think they killed him too soon. And it was like, it shocked me. I'm like, that's a big attack. There's blood coming out of his mouth. Oh my God, are they actually going to kill him right now? And I was like, I don't recall seeing blood in this game. This is pretty serious. And then like, you know, Alpha knows like, I can't heal him. It's too deep. I'm like, oh my God, they're going to kill him right now. And then he goes down like a Chad and he's just like, heroes should always smile or something like that. And then he dies because I smile back at him. I'm like, oh my God, Hochstafan, I was like really getting attached to you. It was just starting and they took him away too soon. So all this takes us on a pursuit to the clouds where the Pope escapes, and we're like, okay, we got to get this Pope. So we go to the Sea of Clouds, and here there's the weirdest intersection of everything. While we're exploring the clouds, we learn that the key we're looking after is inside Bismarck, which is a big white whale, which is also a primal. So we're like, all right, we got to go to the neighboring bird people and find out how to get the whale. While doing that, the Empire's here because they're searching for the key. And we're like, oh my God, everybody's searching for the key. So anyways, we make it to the primal fight. And I have to say, this fight reminded me so much of the whale hunts in Monster Hunter. It was such a cool fight. You're basically like on this like makeshift island that you hooked up to the Enterprise as bait for the whale. And then it has like these two like basically dragonators that are like trying to pull the whale to you.
And you have a field generator you got to trigger that I learned after when the whale's trying to slam you. Really cool fight. Love the mechanics. And you get like spawns that come in the middle to basically keep you busy until you can jump on the whale and smack it. It was a very satisfying fight. As someone who enjoyed Monster Hunter and the whale fights, like this was right up my alley. So super, super fun. And then beating him revealed that he had the key in his stomach the whole time. Unfortunately, the Pope showed up, took the key, opened the way to Eorzea, and then the Emperor's like, oh, that's where we want to go too. So we met the Emperor of the Empire. He let us live. He has a cool airship too. He took off for Eorzea. And then I'm like, I'm going to go there. And then lo and behold, another freaking barrier. And that's where I pretty much left off. We got to figure out how we're going to get into Eorzea, which means we have to figure out how we're going to break this barrier. So we're chugging along. I'm getting close to the end of 3.0, it feels like. And I think some of the chat has confirmed. And then it's all the patches. The patches is really the thing I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish before the end of the month, because I'm only limited to about 12 hours streams per week just from my own personal schedule. So I'll keep you updated on that. It might be a little while till the next journal update. It's going to get a little crazy here in my personal life, but I'll see you either on stream or on the next video. And until then, keep it classy. The Dragon Song War is now over, and now let's hear, feel, and think about it. Welcome back, Classic Crew, to another journal in Final Fantasy XIV. My journey through Heavensward as I seek to go to 3.55. It's been a while since my last update. There's been a lot of things going on, and this is going to be a very meaty journal because I've got a lot of things to cover. Last time, I think we were still seeking out a Scion. A lot has happened there. I've made it to the credits of Heavensward. I've started getting into the patches. I've made it to patch 3.3, which is the proper ending to Heavensward's main story, which is the culmination of the Dragon Song War. And the rest is going to be, it sounds like the rest is the setup to the next expansion. So we're going to cover that in another journal. I've also finished the Coils of Bahamut, I think it's called. We're going to leave that for another journal because that was a big thing. But let's dive into what is probably the best part of my experience in Final Fantasy XIV from a narrative perspective so far. So actually I lied. The last journal ended on the barrier for Eorzea was up. How do we get in here? And it just so happens that through seeking a way to get through it, we found another Scion. So Y'shtola has rejoined us. We found out that she was lost in the ether after doing a forbidden spell. We found her naked in the forest, got her some new drip. I gotta say, the new design for Y'shtola looks amazing. She has a new voice. And I don't know if it's because of my days in Monster Hunter where all the female armor are like, you know, very focused on thighs, but Y'shtola's thighs are now exposed. And I'm like, kind of like that. I was never a thigh guy before, but Monster Hunter has turned me into a thigh guy, kind of. And now she's basically helping us find an energy source so that we can blast through the barrier. So this is a common reoccurring theme in Final Fantasy XIV. We always need to find a source of power that is so focused, whether it is to kill an Ascian, capture an Ascian, get through a barrier, get through something else. And so here we are looking for another source, even though in our back pocket, I'm pretty sure this Eye of Endog is pretty powerful, but it does come back later on. So Y'shtola's like, oh, I know a person who can help us. Let's go see my old master Matoya, who is a new character introduced, which I have to say is one of my favorite. I love that she just does not care. She is so old. She doesn't care about really anyone. She's still a kind like person, but she just doesn't care about the politics. She doesn't care about how you think of her. She just tells it how it is. And I really like Matoya. So we venture off to, what is this place called? Idleshire. I explore a whole new area this is where the scholars used to be. This is where Alphino and his sister grew up, from what I understand. It's where Y'shtola did her training. For some reason, they all left this place. They abandoned it. I think it was attacked at one point, and that's why they left. So now it's all overrun by gobbies, and we've got some good gobbies and some bad gobbies. The bad gobbies, I learned, are trying to revive their primal. And then we got the good gobbies, which say one of the funniest thing I love saying. So giving voices to some of these characters, as I stream, I try to give everyone voices. It's very inconsistent, so don't expect anything good. But my gobbies, I love voicing them because I imagine them having a mechanical voice. And, you know, the text bubble always starts with like, pshka. Imagining these gobbies just starting all their discussions with like, pshka. It's just like so much emotion. I would never talk like that. So yeah, anyways, we go to the cave of Matoya. Beautiful music here too. I didn't realize it was a remake to
a classic song from Final Fantasy 1 because apparently there was a Matoya's cave in there. That is so far back in my memory, I absolutely don't remember it. But anyways, Matoya does tell us that yes, she has an etheric converter, which can basically act as a ram to get through that shield, but how to build one is locked away in a tower, and we have to go through the Great Goobal Library, which is a really nice dungeon for a few reasons. One, I absolutely love the music here. It's got like a jazzy feel to it. It's the first dungeon that really hit me with a jazzy kind of music, and I enjoy jazz. And then the boss designs, specifically the Demon Tome and the ever-living Bibliopath, are just really good design. The Demon Tome reminded me of Wall from the old Final Fantasy games, where you have to kill it before it basically squishes you. And it does have a like total death attack, which I totally didn't pick up on. I'm like, what's it doing? And then it's like, zap. You're all dead unless you run behind it. So I think that is a nod to the old Wall monster. And then the ever-living Bibliopath, like his fight wasn't anything spectacular, just his design as an enemy was really, I love how they designed him. So we get the etheric converter, bring it back to Matoya, and it's like, oh no, we need a power source now to like power this. And you know, I'm like, we have an eye, we could use that, but of course I don't get the credit. We looked at Alpha and I was like, where could we get? Oh, we have an eye, we should use the eye. It's like, of course we should use the eye. So we go back to Ishgard, where Estinian were like, hey, can we get that eye of yours to power this thing so we can break through Ozzy's Law? And we do. We break through it, and to no one's surprise, the Empire's like, ho ho, now that the barrier's down, we can come in here. And as a reminder, we are chasing the Archbishop, who ran off to Ozzy's Law after he stole the key from us, came out of a whale that we killed, and we've been chasing him because he's trying to become a god to rule over the world and do whatever he wants. So the Empire shows up, they're shooting on us, and things are looking bleak. It looks like we're gonna get shot down in the sky. But then out of nowhere, Big H pierces the sky, and Ysela shows up on the back of Big H, which was really surprising. And then she turns into Shiva and starts fighting the Empire. Very cool scene. Did not expect that she was actually going to die at this part. Like, as a character, I didn't think so. I really love the fact that she got this like really cool character arc, from being this villain, this heretic, to being our companion, trying to win over the dragons for peace, to finally doing the final sacrifice to kind of give us the window to get into Ozzy's Law. Was just a really like, you don't see me crying or anything on the stream because I have troubles emoting, but it did impact me in a way that I like that. Like, I wish I could feel more, but from a narrative perspective, really enjoyed it. So we land on Ozzy's Law, which looks like a very stereotypical final dungeon of Final Fantasy. And here we meet a guidance node. The Empire's around scouring. I really like how they're setting up kind of the space. There's like these old monster. Remember, this is an old Allegan civilization structure that causes more problems in this world. And through basically journeying, we're trying to get to, what's it called? The Etherochemical Research Facility. And basically everybody's hanging out down there. But before we get there, we run up to a dragon which is in prison, and it looks like somebody's siphoning the energy out of her. We learn it's Tiamat, the dragon Tiamat, which is the girlfriend or the partner or the brood lady. I don't know how they refer to dragons, but basically the partner to Bahamut, which is playing more into my Bahamut lore, which I enjoy. So what I've learned is, yeah, she was the lover of Bahamut. He died, I think, to the Alligans at one point. And then the Asians were like, yo, we can bring your boy back. You just have to give us like the sacrifice, which I think was being in prison or something. So she's like, all right, do it. And then they brought back Bahamut, but it wasn't the real one. It's like the whole Ysel bringing back Shiva. It's not the real Shiva. It's like a shade of Shiva. So now we've got a shade of Bahamut, which is what the Alligans, from what I understand, it's what the Alligans took Bahamut, put him in the moon, which was a real contraption to suck out the energy so that they could pretty much have like this intense energy to do whatever they want. And I suspect, I'm realizing it now, I think the reason they wanted Bahamut's energy was to open a portal to the Dark World, which we found out in the Crystal Tower, because they just want to suffocate the whole world, because he's like, this world sucks. If I got the lore right, please say, yes, you got it right. If not, you can correct me as long as you don't spoil anything. At this point, the dragon's dad shows back up, Midgar Somer, and he's all like, all right, things are pretty good. You passed my tests. I got my final crystal. I've reconnected my bond with Heidelin, and Midgar Somer evolved into a bigger Midgar Somer. So he's not the biggest one. He's at his second evolution, which is big enough to ride him. and now I got a new mount, a dragon mount, and it lets me fly around Eorzea, which is great because Eorzea is such a vertical like land and world. It just feels so good just flying up and down and all around. A little side adventure here. I did do the Dragon Quest event that was around for a few weeks,
so cool.
and this wasted so much of my time. I spent an hour doing the Dragon Quests because I want my little golem. I enjoy Dragon Quests, and the golem is one of my favorite characters. And so to do it, you have to basically find the fate that spawns. And I was just, so there's a bunch of fates all around Ul'dah that spawn these golem quests, and I was chasing it, and through chasing it I could never find it. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna sit at this one spawn point of this fate, and we're gonna do it here. I waited probably 20 minutes, it didn't spawn. Like, screw it, let's go on our let's go back to my main story quest. And after I finished some key stuff, I came back to that point, waited another like 10-15 minutes, and then finally just slayed the golems. It was so easy of a quest. It was just the waiting for it to spawn that was the hardest part. Back to Eorzea, we make it to the Etherochemical Research Facility, which by the way has fantastic music. Some of these dungeons in FF14 and this whole chapter of content, which is the end of 3.0, really good. It's a very different emotion than the end of Realm Reborn, where Realm Reborn was like real anger. This one was just like, the ending of 3.0 was just a really like sense of, oh, that's cool, oh, this is happening, versus Realm Reborn. I love that I hate this. This is so angering. So yeah, we go to the bottom of the research facility. Another thing that I really enjoy about dungeons, and this is such a minor note, but I actually wrote it. Sometimes so I really love when my character unsheathes his sword. So I always unsheath when I'm in the dungeon to run. It just makes me feel like I'm running faster, and seeing my crew like running, like at one point we're running like a diamond, like in formation. And with the music behind all that, it just really feels like we're on an epic quest to like overcome some kind of great adversity. So anyways, the boss of this one was Eorzea and another Ascian called, I'm gonna bastardize her name, but I think it's Eorzea. So this was kind of funny because we're fighting, and then they're like, oh, now we're gonna go to another phase. I'm like, watch them fuse. And sure enough, that's what they do. They fuse into the Primal, or an Ascian Prime, which has even better music. I forget what the name is. I actually looked it up earlier, but I didn't write it down. One of my favorite tracks in FF14. So this just pumped me up more. We got the fight. And then finishing that is when we get the finale fight. So the Archbishop shows up with a casket and his knights. It's like so dark what's going on here. And in there, he's got the corpse of Haldrath, the very first Dragoon. And that's where we find out where the other eye of Endog was this whole time. So the Archbishop was hoarding it, as I suspected. First of all, he turns himself into a Primal, which I later learn is the Knights of the Round, which is made famous in Final Fantasy VII for me. He turns this corpse with an eye into a massive sword. And then just before, like, just to show how strong it is, he kills Eorzea. I'm like, oh man, that was our arch nemesis, and he just took him out. I'm like, okay, I get it. Narratively, they're trying to show, whoa, look how big this sword is. It can kill an Ascian. I'm like, okay, that's a big sword. But the result was, I guess they were done with Eorzea, because like 20 minutes later, the fight is done. We have no more Archbishop. We have no more super evil godlike form. And we also no longer have a Eorzea. We're down an Ascian. I also forgot to mention before that scene, when we defeat the Ascian Prime, we throw, this is kind of silly, like it was supposed to be a really impactful scene where we throw the white ether sight or something to Eorzea to like basically kill another Ascian. So we throw it, and it's almost like throwing a Pokeball. Like we finish the fight, and I'm just like, oh, throw the white ether sight. It's like, oh no. Actually, she doesn't say oh no, she moans to death. It was the most weird sound to put to somebody who feels like, I'm pretty sure they were dying. It was a very, I don't know the word, lustful moan. It was just weirdly out of place. And I thought it was just me at first, but then some people in the chat were like, why is she moaning? I was like, maybe dying feels good for her. I don't know. Yeah, so I really thought we were going to spare Eorzea, but yeah, we only spared him for this. So it was like a Pokeball being thrown, or pretty much like the Ghostbuster trap to catch the ghost. So anyways, the fight starts. Very cool fight. It's Knights of the Round, basically. So we have the Archbishop, who's like the main Primal, and then he summons his 12 Knights over and over for different attacks. Just a really cool fight overall. And this brought a conclusive end to Heavensward, almost, until Estinian's like, I finally got the second eye. And then silly Estinian, the foreshadowing we have seen, finally delivers, and he turns into Endog and flies away. And I'm just like, great. Now this guy was so angry, wanted so much vengeance, he's become the very thing he's sworn to slay. And then we get a very cool kind of cutscene credits
We arrive on Dragonback to Ishgard, which really sets the scene for what's left in Ishgard. Even though we're doing all these things that's moving the plot forward and we are winning over in the name of good, the game is very good at reminding us that, you know, transformation doesn't just happen. And I like how pretty much the rest of the post-endgame content is about dealing with the realistic problems Ishgard has, that you've just taken out 1,000 years of history driving the populace of Ishgard, the division, you know, the hierarchy of the highborns and the lowborns. That doesn't exist. That doesn't matter. Having a common enemy of the dragons is no longer really there. And so how do you reshape a society overnight? And well, the simple answer is you don't. And side story here, I have to say, one of the things I find Final Fantasy XIV story does better than any other form of media content that I have personally taken in, and I don't know if it's just because I'm older and I'm more aware, but I really feel like the story is narratively echoing what we're seeing in the world today. At its core, it's essentially a story of good and evil, where it's not necessarily a story of good needs to banish evil, although that's what you're doing, but it's a story of the balance of good and evil, and that there is, and later on, I'm getting ahead of myself, later on I feel the story is delivering even more of this importance, that it's not good needs to overcome evil, but that there needs to be a balance. And just from so many perspectives, I find that the story, you can find threads very similar to what's going on in this world, in our real world, whether it is politics, whether it is anger, hate, all these emotions that are found in our real world. So just as I play this game, I just can't help but reflect how we are living aspects of FF14 in our world. I'm just like, that is like, I feel like this is what art is supposed to be, right? Art is a reflection of life. It's an imitation. Is that what it is? There's a quote of that somewhere. I just found that really interesting. I'm curious to see if you guys also think that about this. So 3.0 credits roll, and then we pretty much get into all this extra content now of, okay, we have unrest in Ishgard. We have to deal with it. Not everybody likes Emmerich, even though, you know, he's our daddy and we like him and all that. And one of the first things I wanted to do now that I had a little bit more breathing room was unlock flying in the Dravanian lands. But man, that place is so big. I'm like, I gotta start unlocking some flying stuff. And by doing that, I unlocked a dungeon I completely overlooked called the Dusk Vigil. And people were like, oh, that was supposed to be your first Heavensward dungeon. I'm like, whoops. So doing that, now I can fly around the snow area. I can also fly around the Chocobo Forest. So I have more areas I can fly in Heavensward. I haven't done the other areas yet, though I really want to. We're now trying to basically solidify peace between the dragons and the Ishgardians. So Vidofnir is our kind of dragon that we're like, hey, why don't we have peace? So they're kind of the ambassador to peace. And so there's that plot thread about kind of stabilizing Ishgard. And then there's the other plot thread that is coming back, which is we need to find our friends, the other Scions. And so Kryl is brought in. I'm not sure if this is Kryl's introduction. I don't remember if I saw her before, but fantastic voice. Love this character. Just love how she's like playful with Alphino and just teasing him all the time. And basically she sends us on a quest line to find eventually Thancred, which makes also an amazing return. I love how they introduced him. I love his like design overhaul. Honestly, looking at Y'shtola and Thancred, which I've seen so far. Oh, I've also gotten a glimpse of Papalymo and Ida, but I don't know what's going on with them. Like they keep cutting to like a very short scene. They haven't really revealed too much about them. We've seen Ida's chest for some reason. They really opened up her shirt. I don't know if those are going to be like their final gear. I don't think so, because everyone who's been coming back to the story as the Scions get really cool drip. So Y'shtola and Thancred, they made Thancred like just even more like has more swagger. He's like, I don't know if he's missing an eye or just wants to have an eye patch, has a little goatee. Like when I look back to the Realm Reborn designs, I'm like, oh, it's so boring. And now it's like, oh yeah, you guys are really cool. I love this. So the whole Thancred quest line basically runs us right through a story that introduces us to the Warriors of Darkness, which look like the exact same Warrior of Lights which we saw in the 1.0 trailer, I think, or maybe it's Realm Reborn. Basically the part that like the grandpa warps everyone out of the main battlefield into a new world. These are the Warriors of Darkness, so I'm a little confused as to, is it those people? Are they shadows of those people, or like I've made it far enough. Again, I'm getting ahead of myself because, well, you know what, let's dive into it. So I made it far enough into the finding the Scion quest line that we have also uncovered Minfilia, who is no longer with us. She is back with Hydaelyn and has become the word of the mother. And we've learned through her that a lot about the history of the world, which was very fascinating. So basically in the beginning, there was light and dark. Dark was overcoming light. So light banished dark, aka Hydaelyn banished dark, which had a name called Zodiork, cast him to the moon, and basically destroyed reality into 14 alternative realities, the one that we're in being called the source, and so the other realities are like 13 versions. And I know now that the Warriors of Darkness are from one of those realities where light was so strong and they did such a good job at killing all the badness that it's a blinding light that can't, like, nothing can live there because the light is too strong. And so now they're in our world trying to save their world by collapsing all the worlds, I think is what's going on. I'm missing some plot threads here. I'm just uncovering this, but this is fascinating stuff. Like, I've never seen it quite explained, like good and evil. Like, I love that we are getting into the nuances of, hey, you know, in a world where good actually won, it wasn't a good thing because now nobody can live there. Yeah, so that's where we are on the Scion plot thread. On the Dragon and Ishgard thread, so we got the peace conference, and then we got the whole like anger of the people who don't want peace with the dragons. Like, they've been hating these people their whole life. They're dealing with the grief of their loved ones, and they're like, we don't want peace, we want revenge, we want to see all these people dead, all these dragons dead. And so there's that needs to be dealt with, and Emmerich comes up with the cool idea of, let's go like have a friendly skirmish with the rest of the nations and like show how great we are of a nation. After all, we're a nation of fighters, so let's unite around this grand melee. And you know, it was a very epic fight. It was very fun. I got to fight Roban and I got to go one-on-one against him. It was just like a good kind of like moment of peace for the world of like, let's just have a good time sparring with each other. So that kind of brought people back together, brought people back on board with, okay, this is what we're going to do. At Ishgard, you know, we're eventually going to have a republic. They basically formed a new republic with a House of Lords, a House of Commons. All sounds very familiar. It's basically to represent everyone. And as for the dragon, we had the peace conference, which got destroyed by freaking Estinian, who shows back up. He's like, remember me? There would be no peace. We are all anger. So all this builds up to the epic finale of fighting Endog. And before we get to the finale, we're like, there's no way we can kill Endog with both of his eyes, even if it's a shade of Endog. So we go to and convince Big H of like, yo, we really need your help to put a final end to this 1,000-year war. Are you with us? He sends us on some trials. We prove him in the trials. Come with us. He's like, all right, let's go. And so Endog's already attacking Ishgard. We show up with Big H. Everything's like coming to a culmination. Then freaking Big H and Endog are fighting it off. It's a really cool like rap battle. Big H falls only to give out like surprise, like, haha, I gave my eye to the Warrior of Light. And then we are pretty much set for the final scene. Kill Endog. Very cool fight. And then there's a whole scene of Estinian trying to fight back. And I really like what they did here because they basically gave us, the audience, what we wanted. Estinian was a good, like, he was our bro. He was a good character. And to see him fall to the darkness was, while it was predictable, it was really sad and tragic. So the fact that we got to see him win over his demons and help us remove the eyes from him was just such a good finale to that character's arc so far. Now, what I don't like is we basically have these two eyes that we know have pretty much unlimited power. And what do we do with them? We throw them over a bridge into the abyss. But like, come on, that abyss has a bottom, which I thought was the dumbest thing. Like, before they even brought it, I'm like, oh my goodness, I hope they don't throw this over the bridge. And then Emmerich's like, throw them over the bridge. I'm like, no, don't do that. And so anyways, they fall there. And I don't know if, I'm sure it's going to come back because we've already seen a scene where one of the Warriors of Darkness is looking down into the abyss. I'm pretty sure he's looking for those eyes, because if you want to bring about some calamities, those seem like pretty good tools to do so. So yeah, that was kind of dumb. I don't know why they didn't just seal it away. Just throw it into a hole. That's gonna solve everything. So I think I covered everything from a pretty basic standpoint of what I covered. I've been really doubling down on getting through this MSQ. I've got 2 patches left, I think. So I got 3.45 and 0.55 before I finish my pledge. It's looking like I'm going to end on time. This is really like, I mean, I can't even compare this to a Realm Reborn because it's just that much better. So I want to be fair with my criticism to Heavensward. Like, head and shoulder above Realm Reborn, and it really
delivers a great story. And my only criticism, well, I have quite a bit of criticism, is the format that the story is delivered. I don't think MMOs, or maybe these old MMOs, resonate as well with me as other mediums. I think if the Heavensward story was told through like a TV show, I think I would have appreciated the story that much more in that format, because I do feel that with the limitations of the game when it came out, with the Formula 11 MMO, it feels stiff. You know, you don't get acting, you get very stiff. Here's a character giving away his dialogue. Okay, let's go talk to this character. And it's kind of spoon-fed to you because, you know, they got to spread out the content for the players. So it feels a little bit too slow, a little bit too stiff. And this is just me giving, you know, the good and the bad. I'm not saying it's bad or anything. It's just I wish I could see this in another medium because it's a fantastic story. It's exploring key themes of what makes humanity humanity. And I really love that aspect of nuances of exploring these themes in this fantasy world that lets us, it's just a really like cool philosophical exercise. I don't want to get too deep into it here. I'm going to keep playing this game and seeing what it has to uncover. I hear it only keeps getting better. I think the next expansion is when I heard it plateaus a little bit and then it really picks up. I won't be going straight into that. Once I finish the next patches, I'm going to be taking a break from FF14. But you can look forward to another journal covering Coils, and then probably another one covering the final patches for 3.4 through 3.55. And then that's where we're going to leave off for a bit. So I'll see you in the next journal or on stream. And until next time, keep it classy. Well, I finally completed Coils of Bahamut, and while now I appreciate and understand the lore behind this big dragon, I'm left with a lot of huh and who and what and why should I care about this because I never played 1.0. Welcome back, Classy Crew, to another journal in my Final Fantasy XIV entry, this time a little detour towards an optional raid called the Coils of Bahamut, a raid that I've heard not many people have done, at least not the way I've done it. So I've done this raid in synced mode, which apparently is one of the harder ways to play it. It's more genuine to the original experience, and I did it thanks to Blue, one of the mods of my community, who assembled a team of 7 scions who have been training to take me through Coils for the last couple months. And so they took me through Coils. I got to experience the story, the lore, the boss mechanics. It was a very different experience than Coils, not Coils, the Crystal Tower. One, the lore was more in tune with what I wanted. Funny enough, now I know that the whole Coils of Bahamut ties into the Crystal Tower story, and it was just a way more focused kind of raid because it's only 8 players. It's not 24, whatever it was for Crystal Tower. And it's optional, much to my surprise, considering how much lore is dropped in here and how it affects a character that I would later meet on, which is Eorzea, so the other twin that we barely see in Realm Reborn, and we don't really see in Heavensward until the end. Gets a lot of screen time, gets her character fleshed out, her motives and all of that. And the timing of me doing this content worked out so well because just as I finished Coils of Bahamut, I met Eorzea. She came back into the story in Heavensward around like the same time, and I'm like, oh man, I love you like so much. Like you are one of my favorite characters. And it's not so much because of what she did in Coils, it's how she's establishing herself in the Heavensward expansion. Let me just walk through kind of my experience here and just what I felt going through it all, how it lived up to my expectations. I did this across 3 streams, so it took me roughly almost 10 hours to get through the whole raid, which is one of the longer raids I've ever done. I don't remember Crystal Tower. I think that was 2 raids if I remember correctly. And it started off like I got this raid series or raid in general, I don't know how to refer to it, hyped up a lot. So when we went into the very first beginning of the raid, I was like, all right, I'm hot, let's go. And we're fighting like a snake. And before I know it, the victory music pops up and I was like, what? We're done already? Like that's cool. They're like, oh yeah, don't worry. There's 13 parts to this thing. We just finished the first part. Another thing to mention about that first room, which was the Imperial Exploratory site, I didn't realize we were actually going into the wreckage of the moon, basically. So that's really cool that still exists on the world. Because for just that part of lore has always kind of pulled me in where I'm like, what happened into this place? And so now that I'm picking up the pieces, I want to know more about it. So the fact that we go into the moon and we get to go and actually see what are the remnants of 5 years ago is very fascinating to me. Also inside of this first stage, we get a really cool rendition of Answers, the song, one of my favorites, but it's played like on a piano in the background and it's kind of remixed. It's a nice subtle beat. And when I realized, I'm like, wait, that's answers. And I was loving it so much. So the bosses and all that, they didn't do much for me in that first phase. So anyways, everyone's like, haha, yeah, phase 1's done. Let's go to phase 2. So we go back into Coils Part 2. This one is, I think you have like a 12 minute timer that's not on screen, that you have to make it through the whole level, or else you just kaboom, you die. Another thing that was funny here is, okay, so when I was doing this whole raid, I actually had those 7 scions I was working with, my community members, up on screen as PNG tubers or whatever you call them. So you can see at the bottom of my screen all 7 of them. And to the far left on demand, ads requested to go there because when he talks, basically his finger points up. So when he's talking to me, you can actually see this funny interaction of a little like JPEG or PNG character just pointing his finger at me. And so at this part, he wanted to make a joke. He's like, oh, I actually, in fact, his finger goes up. That was so funny. So the whole joke was that one of the bosses here is actually called Ads, which stands for something I don't know, which is the same name as our community member who's also running the raid with us. And anyway, so the joke was we had to kill Ad because he was evil. Most of these like boss fights or these early run-throughs, these phases, they didn't leave too much of an impression on me. So we got through that and I'm like, okay, that was easy. What's next? And then we get into the engine room, and the engine room literally has no fights. They're all optional. You just bounce and work your way down, and it's like, and we finish. I was like, okay, that's easy too. We're going into phase 4. I was like, guys, why did you guys hype up Coils of Bahamut? This is ridiculously easy. And they're all like, haha, don't worry, it's gonna get hard real soon. So then we go into the drive cylinder, which is basically an elevator level, which is also a good time. And here we get some pretty unmemorable bosses. So we get the Clockwork Knight and Dreadnought combo. Again, we melt them, we move on, and I'm just like, oh, we're gonna get through Coils of Bahamut in like the next 2 hours. This is going super easy. And then number 5 showed up. Phase 5 was the central core, where we probably met our first piece of resistance, which was Twintanya, which was a dragon that could summon tornadoes and would zoom, like jet zoom across the map, and would often kill us. And this is also the first part where we get a glimpse of Bahamut. We're actually fighting in his claw, and I'm like, oh my god, this thing is so big. And another funny thing that happened during this fight is, I guess at one point some characters get imprisoned, and it just so happened the only character in our party that happens to be a Lalafell gets imprisoned, so we have to fight him because he's now like red, so he looks evil. I'm like, of course the Lalafell turns evil. All Lalafells are evil. And of course I'm referring to Takashi in our party. He's just like, I hate you so much. So yeah, this was also where we got our first, after that battle, we got our first glimpse of actual Bahamut, at least his head and shoulders. And it looks like there's these lasers basically rebuilding him. So we're like, oh no, that sacrifice from 5 years ago was all for nothing, because Bahamut is regenerating and he's gonna like destroy the land again. So like, this is a pretty big problem to have as an optional raid. I'm surprised that they never made it mandatory from a lore perspective. So I think that ends like a first like chunk part 1, and then we go into part 2, which is going into the 6th phase of the raid, which is Dalamud's Shadow. So now we're the levels are just getting weird and disconnected at this point, but we pretty much just fight a boss called Rafflesia or something, which is like a big plant. And there's a whole honey mechanic. Like if you're honey, you gotta like stand somewhere. You gotta leave enough slugs alive to eat the honey. It's a very different kind of boss fight from anything else I fought. Other than that, not much else to say there. We continue down into phase 7. This is where I got introduced to Nail Vendarnis, who I understand is an Imperial that was part of Project Meteor that brought down the moon. Now, since finishing Coils, I actually went on YouTube and watched a whole 1.0 lore video before recording this journal, because it just happened to drop from, I think his name is Jesse Cox. Apparently, this character was quite important because I had no idea who they were. It seems like they were a primary character in Final Fantasy XIV 1.0, and they were all about like one of the top commanders, and then they basically went crazy with the moon and summoned the moon and caused all of this terrible things. So we get introduced to them, but we fight this other cool boss called Melusine, which I really like this. So she was basically like a Medusa that could like turn people to stone. And there was a dude like an ogre she would summon called Renault. Fantastic name for an ogre. And I understood that like you have to basically freeze him, or you have to get behind him when she stares. Like you can't kill Renault, you have to keep him alive. So that was an interesting mechanic to basically use Renault as a wall, otherwise you get zapped. Continuing on, we went into the central decks. Here we fought an avatar, which was basically just like some weird biological looking machine which shot things. I didn't have too much to say about that. It was pretty much melted and move on. Going into phase 9 is when things got very interesting, because this was probably the hardest fight in
the Coils of Bahamut, because this is where we have to fight Nail Van Darnus. I think it was 11 that was the hardest one. So we learned Nail Van Darnus is actually a woman, which I had incorrectly assumed their gender. And this fight, while hard, I think it took us 3 hours to get through this, was genuinely fun to learn and pull off. Like the phases were just like when we actually got it in sync, it just clicked and felt good. And it just required such good coordination of team effort. Like, you got meteors coming. Okay, now we got to coordinate. Or the golems eating the meteors. Yes. Okay, now we're going to phase 2. Everyone huddle in the circle. All right, do you have the chain curse on you? If you do, run to that circle. Okay, now everybody move. Stand here, don't stand there. It just required that muscle memory of learning. It really reminded me of a little bit of a Dark Souls boss if it was kind of like converted into an MMO. I heard that this boss got a lot of hate when it launched. There was, even to this day, a lot of people don't like it, and it's the cause for a lot of raids now having an easy mode by default. But with the crew that I had, and it's wild because even with them who knew the fight, who have been training this for months, it still took us 3 hours and who knows how many attempts. I really enjoyed that. That stood out to me as a really fun fight. So after that fight, I think that's when we get another reveal in the story, and we find out that Eorzea, the granddad, is actually not dead. He's sealed down here. And I don't know if it's here or later, but we also find out he's kind of evil. And Alphinaud's like, that's not our grandfather. Beware what you do. And we see a little bit of that sibling rivalry. The next boss was less memorable, but he had a funny name. It was just I'm do good. He's so good, he calls himself I'm do good. It's basically like an electric dog. He's got the son and daughter that he summons. We have to melt those fast, and then it's pretty much just melt them, avoid the attacks. I know I'm not getting like in depth with all of the mechanics. I just don't feel like that's what this channel is about. I like to share what really stood out to me, but I'm not about dissecting all the boss fights and understanding and comparing like this is what that is. And I did all of this, by the way, in a samurai class, so I was a melee DPS, which is a very different experience than any other, like if I'd be a tank or a healer or a ranged DPS. So I find my role is oftentimes melt things. If something else pops out, go melt that. Now go back to melting things, and on we go. Off to the next one, the regeneration grid. This took us to the 11th phase of the Coils of Bahamut, where our party got split, and we had to do a little bit of trash mob as we were split, which eventually took us to Kalia, a very unfriendly Hydra. And I love that this Hydra is named Kalia, because then you could say Kalia the Hydra. So here, this was a very good fight for like positioning. It had like a gravity well underneath and kind of like a gravity or blue fire thing that you had to avoid, which got really intense in the final phase because you had to like pretty much preemptively run in circles around it as this like shadow chased you, and you had to like outrun it. So basically same thing, we had to melt it. Oh, it also had like a 2 orb mechanic towards the end where there's like a physical orb and a magic weak orb, and you have to like melt them together and they have to die at the same time, so it required some coordination. Also great. And this is actually after this fight where we find out that Eorzea is actually evil. He turned basically into a primal, which is Phoenix, and it all happened because when he was summoning all of this energy, this ether to like seal Bahamut, he channeled the wish of all of the people for like basically the chance for the world to be reborn. In an ironic twist, that summoned Phoenix, which he now is, and I guess Bahamut's like controlling him. So plot twist, he's a primal now, so I guess we got to kill him. So we go into Phoenix. That fight too was pretty fun. I love that we get like the answer theme song playing like on an organ. It's really like dark, but it's iconic. And just the fight was fun about like positioning. There's a part where you're like getting targeted with fire blast, and you basically have to like reposition those so they don't hit your teammates. So positioning is important, timing is important, and just like jumping on the ad so you melt those, then back on Phoenix. I really enjoyed that fight. I think we got it in 1 or 2 attempts. And then all of this opens up the door to finally our final fight of Bahamut, and my whole crew decided to go full silent for this fight on the first attempt to really make me feel like the intimidation of this massive dragon, and the fact that like Answers is just playing, like you just got the full lyric version of Answers, and the fact that my crew was silent, it was just that much more eerie. I was just like playing in this solitude as that like really slow part starts. And I love how the music only progresses if you make it to the next phase, which gets more and more intense. And then he's like Giga Flare, Terra Flare, and it was chaos. Like that battlefield, I could barely tell what was going on because I'm just like, oh my god, there's a blast here, what do I do? Everybody's like scramble. So we tried for I think an hour. We were quite tired by the second night and we didn't succeed, but we came back on the third stream, first try. I think the team had been practicing a little bit between the streams. We got it down, and I got to see the finale of all of this. Unfortunately, I got to see the finale from the floor because I was dead when we slayed Bahamut, which is not so cool. I did get to see his gear, so I got all of his gear, tried it on. Looks pretty cool, but for my samurai style, I'd rather keep my samurai look for now. I just thought it was very, like, it really helped piece together a lot more of the lore that's coming together about this entire world and about the Alligans and what they were all about and how they were, like, you know, harnessing Bahamut and Moon, and the fact that they had like all these dragons in like test tubes so that they could extract like their prayers and wishes to sustain this primal in a moon that could feed power to the Crystal Tower. It's just like really wild backstory. There was something else I was going to say. As a player that only started in 2.0, I feel that the story doesn't deliver as much of a punch here because you're dealing with a lot of elements of world building that were set up in 1.0 that I feel are all wrapped up here. You know, Louis Swa, I didn't even realize was an NPC and a character that you like were interacting with regularly in 1.0 because you barely see him in 2.0. So like to see his kind of the end of his story here didn't really do much for me. The fact that I didn't know who Nail Van Darnus was, you know, the fact that I didn't live through this whole moon crashing, there was a lot less emotional connection. While cool, it fills in the blanks. I'm just like, okay, I feel this was very much a send-off for the 1.0 players to get closure to a lot of things. But I will say, I love the fact that I got Eorzea, I got to hear some cool music, I finally got to experience it, and honestly, running this with a group of Scions that are all part of the community that I know, we got to banter a little bit, which was fun. We're just joking, like one night when we're tired, it was just like the whole thing was just falling apart, and everybody was in good spirit, nobody was too like frustrated. I had some good coaches walking me through the whole thing. So that was my experience with Coils. It was quite a unique one, very different than Crystal Tower from a mechanics point, a lore standpoint, and I'm glad I did it because now I'm already seeing it reflecting in some of the dialogue choices. Eorzea gets a character growth out of this plot where she really understands to like kind of let go, bringing back her grandfather and making her own identity of what she wants to do, how she wants to help Eorzea. And it's referenced in some of the scenes of Heavensward. I was like, wait, if we didn't do the lore, would she still be saying this? And they're like, and my community's like, no, she says something different if you don't do the Coils of Bahamut. So I'm like, okay, that's weird because she gets character growth in this optional thing. And how does like, what's the experience if you don't do the raid and you don't have that character growth in your Eorzea? You're dealing with a very different Eorzea. So it's fascinating, but I also worry about the people who didn't do this raid, that they're missing out on a stronger and more interesting Eorzea. Like, it's probably subtle text choices, but it's got to play a factor somehow. So if you haven't like done Coils, I'd love to know what you think of your Eorzea, or go back and do this so that you can unlock a stronger character growth for Eorzea. So that's where I am. I have one more journal left to share with all of you, which wraps up my Heavensward journey, and I will see you in that one or on the next stream if you can find me there. Until next time, keep it classy.
Pledge complete. I finished all of Final Fantasy XIV up to the end of Heavensward 3.55 before June 30th. Here are all my thoughts as I'm about to embark into Stormblood, the second expansion of FF14. Welcome back, Classic Crew. This is the final journal for a little while in my Final Fantasy XIV journey. I pledged to make it to the end of Heavensward. I've made it. I completed it before my deadline, and now I'm going to go play some Monster Hunter GU. I don't know when I'm going to come back to Stormblood to play Stormblood, but I wanted to share my thoughts on where everything is, because the last two patches, 3.4, 3.5, 3.55 for that matter, is all pretty much setting up for Stormblood, which is giving me a very different feeling compared to when I was wrapping up Realm Reborn, heading into Heavensward. And so I'm going to be comparing those a lot and also reflecting on what it's been like playing this MMO for almost 150 hours over the last few months, how it lived up to my expectations, and just where I'm at with the game as a whole, because this game means a lot of things to different people, and of course it means something to me now. So last time I just finished with Endog and taking out his eyes, throwing it over the bridge. Actually, before we get into 3.4, what I first did was taking advantage of a yokai event that was happening, Yokai Watch. So I dabbled in that for an hour. I really like how this event is structured. First, you have to get the watch so that you could participate in duties. I think that's what they were called. Fates, not duties, fates. So that you could then collect medals to then get yokais. And if you collected enough yokais, you could get mounts. And then you could eventually strategically play in certain areas to try and unlock legendary weapons depending on what you wanted. I didn't care for the weapons. I also didn't have the time for it. What I did like is minion collecting. And so the fact that I could collect, I think it's up to 15 minions just by rotating around, that to me was quite fun. And I got about, I think, 5 or 6 yokai. So unfortunately, I didn't get enough to unlock the mount. I think you needed like 13 or so to get the mount. I was enjoying collecting it, but it has to be done like in different phases or either with a group of people, because I did it for about an hour, and after collecting 5 or 6, I'm like, okay, I'm satisfied. I'm over this game loop. Let's go do something else. And then from there, I actually went back to the MSQ. Unfortunately, the event has ended now, so I can not go back and actually complete my minion gathering for the yokais. I'll have to wait probably another 2-3 years for that content to come back. But such is the things of MMOs. You take advantage of the content as it comes. I don't really get much of a sense of FOMO when it comes to this game. While I'm playing it, I will participate in events. I will gather what I have, but I'm not about like, oh, I got to collect them all. I think that creates unnecessary stress in my play style. No shade if that's how you play it, but that's just how I am. I go with the flow. Whatever is available while I'm playing, I'll take advantage of it. Other than that, we move on. Now we're back into the game. The dragon's dead. Estinian's back to his sane self, although now he has lost his sense of purpose because he doesn't know who to be angry at anymore. And so we kind of get this closure with Estinian. You've got Alphino kind of like saying, you know, there's more to life than revenge. There's the power of friendship, and I'm your friend, and blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure if we're going to see Estinian again as a character. I think his story is done. I don't see how we could use him again unless they send him on a whole different story arc. I mean, he has a whole new identity to build for himself. So there's a lot of potential there. And as a warrior, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back in Stormblood. And now I'm not going to go kind of like linearly into what I experienced and what I'm thinking. I'm going to bounce around because this whole journal is to recap the end and the preparation of Stormblood. And so I know that the third expansion is very war heavy, just like this one was a little bit more fantasy from what I understand. Well, not from what I understand. I know Heavensward is very fantasy. It's a story about dragons and humans and the war that ensued. Whereas the second expansion, Stormblood, seems to be focused a lot more on the proper war between the Empire and the Free Folk. I'm going to call them the Free Folk because I could say the Eorzean Alliance, but it seems to include more than that. It seems to be everyone who's not Empire against the Empire, which, if that is what the second expansion is, it's kind of a callback to 2.0 with a Realm Reborn where the main enemy was the Empire. It just makes that whole story bit look like a skirmish in comparison to what it sounds like is coming up with Stormblood. Meanwhile, we get a lot of wrap-up story with the Ishgardians. So we've got Emmerich, who has now officially formed a republic that comprises a House of Commons, a House of Lords, separating state and church, which goes back to what I was saying in my last journal, that this game really echoes a lot of the things we see in our real world. I'm pretty sure this is based on English government structure, and I say this very naively, like I'm just not that familiar with how people in how the UK government is formed, but I seem to recall that there is a House of Commons and a House of Lords, but I think that's what it is in the UK. And the whole state and church is all kind of the root of democracy in the Western world. So the fact that Ishgard is embracing this sets it up for a lot of exploratory narrative plots of, well, here's what we're seeing in our real world. Now let's explore this in this fantasy world. The next stage after this in the story, Emmerich gets super smiley. And it's so weird because he's been such a broody, angry man for the whole time we've been with him. But now he's happy. His war's over. He's built his dad's dead. His oppressive dad's dead. He's kind of in the spotlight now. And what can this guy do? I mean, all he's got to do is play politics and drink. And so he's all like, ha, my buddy, come and drink with me. He is so flirty towards me. He just wants to take me out. And it really is a 180 switch on this character who is so broody, and now he's like my best chum who just wants to like hang out with me. And his intentions are questionable because it's almost like over the top friendliness. It's like a little questionable about the friendliness, but I like it. I like Sir Emmerich's attention. So that wraps up that thread, and then we start getting the new plot threads given to us. So we go back to the Warriors of Darkness. Eorzea is now back in the story, so she runs away from them, gets hit by an arrow, and poison. Luckily, Thancred was there to save her. And now we start getting a little bit more into the focus of who are these Warriors of Darkness? What do they want? I preemptively already shared this in the last journal by accident because my streams were kind of overlapping. My journals weren't up to date with my streams. Anyway, sorry about that. We know now that the Warriors of Darkness, what they're here for, they're basically here to try to bring on, they're trying to save their world because it's covered in light, and they're kind of doing it in a weird, strange way. So we're pretty much interrupting them, first from trying to kill Garuda, then they try to kill Titan, which has a whole little side story with this poor little boy. I don't know if he's a boy or what to call him, but this poor little thing called Gabu, who this made me feel so much because it's so sad. So Gabu is trying to get back to his parents, who apparently have been kidnapped as sacrifices to bring back Titan. And so we go with Gabu to save him, or to save his parents, only to find out that we're too late. And Gabu sees his parents dead there, who have already been sacrificed for the sake of bringing back Titan. And in his anguish, he summons Titan, which is just the most tragic bit that could have happened to this poor little creature. And he's got the cutest name. So I really felt bad for Gabu. Now Titan came up, we beat him back down. Then we start getting plot threads for the next narrative piece, which all revolves around Little Alamigo. So Eorzea mentions that, there's crystals being funneled there. Like there's a lot of suggestions that primals are coming back. This is like the whole overall theme of FF14 is gotta go stop people from summoning primals, or gotta go kill primals before the Warriors of Darkness do it. So this is where it gets kind of interesting, and I'm kind of jumping around what happened first, but I'm gonna kind of go with, we got closure to the Warrior of Darkness ban, a story to some degree, which I was not expecting. I was really thinking that the Warriors of Darkness group would be the next antagonist to the next expansion, and even beyond that. I thought that the third expansion, I think it's called Shadowbringers, I think that's the third one. I thought Shadowbringers would be linked to the Warriors of Darkness of this group for some reason. I don't know why, I can't explain it. So to see that they've gotten closure, and this all happened because Eorzea, who is also, what's his name? He also shows up as another character. So we basically find out through the whole thing, Eorzea was not actually a traitor, which makes me go like, well, I still don't really like him, but I guess I can't hate him now because he's back on the good side. He was orchestrating this whole thing for the Warriors of Darkness and the Warrior of Light to face off so that they could all kind of like shimmer their crystals together, which is really weird that Eorzea knew how to do all this. But anyways, we fight them in what is one of the most iconic fights, where my group takes on the Warriors of Darkness. As we're beating them, they keep reviving. It's kind of an endless, pointless fight. And then Alice comes out with the coolest sword of energy, and she's like, I got this, and we just gotta like defend her, and the mechanics of the fight becomes very interesting. And then when we finally slay them, that's when Eorzea's like, everybody, haha, we're all like in this together, raise your crystals. And that takes us to the Hydaelyn realm, to which point they're all like sharing their story, that it's a real story of, their world is messed up because there's too much light. They did all the good things. They fought for the light, and they got rewarded by the whole world basically being destroyed by the light. Now, it seems like because all their crystals were I don't know, attuned or something, that gave Hydaelyn more strength, which let her free Minfilia so that she can go back with the Warriors of Darkness to their world to absorb the light back into Hydaelyn. This is how I'm understanding it. I don't know if it's right. To save their world, which is nice, happy closure because they got what they wanted. But is that how easy it is? Like, how do you just absorb light? Don't you have to introduce darkness? I don't know. I'd say it's closure, but that plot thread is definitely going to come back some way, somehow. There's no way that... Anyways, so this is also where we get Minfilia's official goodbye. She gets to see all of the other scions. Gives us Tupsimari, which is the head of the staff for Louis Suez, so it's like the proper handoff of Minfilia. And I assume this is, for the most part, the end of Minfilia. We get the closure of, Minfilia's not coming back. All the scions got to see her. So that closes the chapter on that. So now we've closed the book, the chapter on Ishgard. We've closed the book on the Warriors of Darkness. And now we're opening the book on really the only plot thread that we have left, which is what is going on in Little Alamigo, and where the heck is Papalymo and Ida, and what are they doing? All of this, by the way, felt very weak to me. In hindsight, like, it all makes sense. I see why they did it. But when I was remembering what it was like to wrap up Realm Reborn and all of the things that they were setting up, like, that ended in a crescendo with the bloody banquet. Here, I feel the crescendo has already happened, the end of the Dragon Song War, and now we're just like setting something up, but nothing is like, what's happening? That's what I feel at this point. And I said at this point because I actually got so pulled in, I ended up doing a 6-hour stream because I wanted to know what happened next, and I ended up completing my pledge like a week early just because I didn't want to stop playing. So I guess they know what they're doing. So anyways, we go back to Little Amigo. We learn that there's this whole group, I think they're called the Masks. There, through our investigation, we find Papalymo and Ida, and we're like, yo, where were you guys? And like, oh, we were here. We tried to send letters. You didn't get them? And we're like, no, we thought you were dead. So that also wraps up the plot thread of the Bloody Banquet. We learn that the Masks are led by the Griffin and that they're basically trying to get their home back, Al Amigo, because the Eorzean Alliance doesn't want to do anything about it. They lost their home like 20 years ago to the Garlean Empire, and they want their home back, and nobody else is going to fight for it. They will. Seems like it makes a lot of sense. Of course, all this is nice and kosher until we find out that the Asians are involved. And lo and behold, he gives the Griffin the eyes that, of course, I was like, those are going to come back very soon. I was surprised to see them come back this quick. But anyways, the eyes of Endog are back in game. Now they're in the hands of the Griffin, and everybody is suspecting that the Griffin is trying to orchestrate a war between Eorzea and the Garlean Empire. Pretty smart for him because he knows he can't win against the Garlean Empire. So let's make the big powers fight so he can get his land back. Like, I get this guy. So from here, this is where we get some buildup. I like the scene where we actually get Sir Emmerich joining in Gridania, and he's basically like joining the alliance, and everyone's trying to figure out like what's going on. We get a little tease of Nero coming back into the story. So he's like out in Cartno, like, aha, I found it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What are you up to, Nero? I like this. I like this character. Nero's a good one. And so, then the Eorzean Alliance is on to what's going on with the Griffin. They're like, we should probably send some scouts and near the wall with the Garlean Empire near Little Al Amigo. Little Al Amigo? No, just Al Amigo. That's where chaos begins. So we get this explosion. We get the dungeon that we have to go now fight because there is basically a war that has started. The Griffin's plan is already in action. He has dressed up a bunch of his people in Eorzean Alliance gear, making it look like it's the Eorzean Alliance attacking the Empire. At least that's what I think is happening. And at the end of this, we interrupt the Griffin. We fight him. We find out that he's actually Ilberd. What a surprise. Like, come on, we all saw that coming. And we get one of the most quotable lines of FF14. It's actually a soundbite on my channel now. As you're fighting him, he calls you sloppy, which is one of the best soundbites I've heard. I love it. Like every time I like mess up, even in Monster Hunter now, I'm just thinking, oh, sloppy. So that fight ends. It seems like everything's going to go well until lo and behold, he decides to sacrifice himself with the eyes, summoning one of the like craziest primals ever that we don't know what it is at this point, but we're like, holy heck, this is going to be powerful. So Papalymo pulls out the Tupsimari and seals it very much like Louis Sois, therefore sacrificing himself. And I say sacrificing like this because I don't feel like he's dead. Everything points to him being dead. The story is not apologetic about being like, Papalymo is dead, yo. Like, he did the same thing Louis Sois did, and that killed Louis Sois. And you even see like this mark on Ida disappear, which was apparently cast by Papalymo. Everything is telling me he's dead, but I don't feel like he's dead. I'm like, something's off here. It felt too easy. Like he sacrificed himself. Like, I don't know. I felt that there wasn't enough of an emotional buildup to kill this character. And so I don't believe he's dead. And I might just be in denial, but I can't feel sad about Papalymo right now because I'm sure he's somewhere. But no, the game hasn't told me any of that yet. Like, I progressed hours and there's still no sign of Papalymo. So maybe he's dead. I'm just still trying to deal with it. So with Papalymo's sacrifice, we get this new Primal, which is sealed but not dead. He's just sealed in a ball of light. And so now we got to figure out, great, what are we going to do with this ball of light? Cue awesome introduction to a new samurai. So the samurai arrives to the shores of Eorzea, which is getting set up for Stormblood, where the samurais are introduced. We learn this is Gotetsu. What an intro. Love this character already. He's loud, he's boisterous, he's a little bit dumb. And then everyone's trying to figure out, so now flashback to Gridania. The leadership's trying to figure out, what do we do with this big ball of light Primal? Like, how do we get rid of this? Nero shows up. He's like, yo, everybody, I hear you need some help. I'm like, oh, what a cool intro. We're just bringing all the characters. I'm starting to now develop attachment to the characters at this point. They're using their characters in a way that feels a little bit less stiff, I find. And so now we got Nero, we got Gotetsu, and then like Yugiri's like, yo, you're from my land. And so we're getting more like diversity just in the world of what's going on around here. So all of this sets the land where Nero's like, hey, I've got Omega. You guys remember that thing? We can use Omega to destroy that. Just like how the old Elegans took care of Bahamut. And everyone's like, that sounds like a pretty crazy idea. It's like, you got any other option? And so off we go to the Cartno Flats. We summon Omega, which I was expecting to be like this massive robot. Turns out it's like a little beetle robot, which moves fast. Very different than what I was expecting. And cue one of the most epic cutscenes we've gotten yet in game, which is the battle between Omega and what I've later learned is the Primal Shinryu, which this thing is just, it looks like a cross between a Leviathan and a Bahamut. It looks pretty crazy. Cool fight. And then after all of that settles, we get into our first major plot twist where Ida reveals herself for her true nature, which is, I am actually Liz, Ida's younger sister. And even though we were talking with this character the whole time and we actually have no concept of who Ida was, when she told me Ida died 5 years ago, I'm just like, oh no, Ida. Even though I don't know who she is, I'm like, but Ida, she's dead. And so now we have Liz, who is quite bluntly quite hot, because especially the way that they dress her up in her Stormblood debut. So now at this point, Yugiri and Gotetsu are like, well, we're going to go back to Doma, and everything is set for like, well, the war's about to break up here in Eorzea. We're screwed. And at this point, I pretty much just queued up the Stormblood trailer to look at it. And I really feel the Stormblood trailer had a lot less info than the Heavensward trailer. I feel Heavensward trailer had more of a narrative punch to it. It had more emotions. It was showing you the wrap up of the bloody banquet, where I'm feeling like angry vengeance about that. They're laying up the next story arc of the dragons and Ishgard, and there's just so much emotion in that trailer. In comparison, Stormblood, like in my notes, it's all about introducing things. So you get introduced first to the monks. You see Lys and the Warrior of Light fighting on this like hand, which is introducing kind of like, I guess the monk world, even though the monk's already in the game. It just shows off Lys in a really like hot outfit. And then it just shows like, okay, now we're going across the sea to these other lands, and we see like an underwater temple. Everything is very kind of like Eastern culture inspired. We hear a lot of like, for lack of a better word, like Asian instruments, Asian temples. I know I'm being very broad here. We get introduced to the samurai town, and then we see like a samurai fighting samurai-esque soldiers, I guess. And at this point, we see Gogetsu and Yugiri like standing atop the town looking on. And I have to say, I've thrown a lot of shade to Yugiri, but I think they gave her new drip in the trailer. She looks fantastic here. This is like the best Yugiri has ever been. She can keep the mask off in her CGI form. And that's it. It's all like, hey, look, let's nerd out to like Eastern culture stuff, is how I see it as a Western dude. But it doesn't really convey much. Like, I'm surprised the trailer didn't show much of anything from the Primal that we just summoned. It doesn't show anything from the Empire. It just really shows like, hey, adventurer, here's where we're going to explore next. And then the music and the final music is very like military based, so it is drumming up that sense of war. And even the banner at the end is like evoking a sense of war. And then it's like Stormblood, of course. There's a storm coming made of like through war, which is blood. So now the expansion makes sense. So I'm surprised that how do you go from, the 3.0 trailer, which is so powerful, to the 4.0 trailer, which is okay, but it's a step down for sure. And I've heard a lot of people say that 4.0 is one of the weakest expansions. And the fact that I'm already feeling a little underwhelmed going into it does not make me feel too confident about what I'm going to think of 4.0. But then I hear 5.0 and 6.0 is where it soars. And I think we're in 7.0 with Dawn Trail now, so I don't know. So that's where I'm at. Upon reflecting, I'm going to keep this relatively short. I went into FF14 with the expectation of it being the best story ever told in any medium. And I've shared this kind of along the way, so it shouldn't be a surprise. But I just disagree with that claim at this time. I feel that the MMO formula does hold this story back from being told. I do think that when you consume the story the way I am, which is you focus on the main story, you don't get the chance to be ingrained into the world to the same level as those who originally experienced it 10 years ago when they were waiting for the content to come out, and that gave them more time to kind of absorb the rest of the world, do other things, connect with this fantasy world more, so that when new story was dropped, it was more rewarding, it was like better. But when you're consuming it all back to back to back, it just feels a little, I don't want to say shallow, because it's not that shallow. There's a lot of threads and there's a lot of depth to the story, but I think stiff is the right word, and it comes back to MMO, just the animation being so limited, your main character not being able to talk, the overabundance of like nodding, so many cutscenes of watching people standing and nodding. Like there's so much of that, which that gives the sense of stiffness. And even the combat where I'm at now, and I know that people would say, well, you're only playing one class, switch it. But I feel, I'm pretty much on autopilot at this point. It's like, get the story, do my combos for my samurai so I can like melt things. There are some fights which are more fun and strategic than others, but a lot of it is just repeat the combo. And then where it gets a little bit more strategic is like, okay, coordinate with your team. So is this a mind-blowing game to me at this stage? 10 years after it came out? No, it's not. It's something I'm glad I experienced. I'm glad I understand the reference, the characters, this world. I want to keep exploring it. I want to keep seeing where this goes. But if I would be introducing anybody to this game, I would be throwing their expectations so low. Even after Heavensward, I would be saying, this is a game that has a lot of impact to pop culture reference. It is a game that is beloved by many. It has a story that is definitely worth being experienced. Maybe watch a trailer on YouTube if you're not looking to grind 100 hours or invest hundreds of hours of your time, or if you're not into MMOs. Otherwise, it's very hard to recommend to someone, especially if they're not into MMOs, especially if they don't have a lot of time. But all that said, I'm happy I did it. I'm going to keep doing it eventually. I don't know when. And for everyone else, I'm really glad that I could share this with all of you and make it a little bit of a special experience for me. And I hope that you appreciated my first impressions of things, even if maybe I was sometimes not always kind to this game. So that's where we are. I really look forward to getting into the samurai world, but I'm not going to get too excited since that could be many months away, if not like a year away. But when I do come back, I will be dropping messages everywhere and letting you know when I'll be returning to Eorzea or Doma. And until next time, keep it classy.